Avoid adopting the misfortunes of others as your own. There's a subtle tragedy that plays out every day, often unnoticed. You encounter a friend in despair, a colleague drowning in pressure, or a loved one who cannot escape the gravity of their sorrow, and without realizing it, you begin to carry their burden as if it were your own. This is not empathy, it's emotional theft, robbing your own peace to suffer pain that was never yours to begin with. Stoicism teaches that while compassion is noble, suffering by proxy is not. There's a dangerous illusion that says, if I hurt with you, I help you, but pain multiplied doesn't lighten the load, it spreads the fire. The moment you internalize another's misfortune, you distort your own reality. You begin to see the world through their despair, their fears, their chaos. You forget your center, your clarity, your reason. It is a silent epidemic, taking on anxiety that isn't yours, mirroring fear that doesn't belong to you, and becoming emotionally entangled in lives you cannot control. You start waking up with weights that were never meant for your shoulders. This is not strength, it's surrender. True strength is to stand tall while others tremble, to remain calm in their storm, not out of coldness, but out of service, because a steady hand is what rescues a drowning soul, not another drowning hand. To avoid adopting the misfortunes of others is not selfishness, it is wisdom. You cannot be a lighthouse if you throw yourself into every shipwreck. Guard your peace like breath underwater. Only then can you lift others without sinking yourself. Freedom is the internal ability to choose rightly, regardless of external conditions. Most people think freedom is about movement, about doing what you want, when you want, how you want. But that's not freedom. That's indulgence dressed up as liberty. Real freedom doesn't scream, it whispers. It lives in silence, in the split second before reaction, in the quiet space where you choose principle over impulse, clarity over chaos. You could be locked in a cell and still be freer than someone with no walls, no bars, because they're chained to their desires, their fears, their rage, their addictions. You could be stripped of money, reputation, even physical health, and still possess something unbreakable, the will to respond with virtue no matter what. Freedom is not the absence of hardship. It is the refusal to be owned by it. When the world presses in, when people provoke you, betray you, shame you, do you react or do you respond? Do you collapse into anger or rise into reason? In that decision lies the purest form of liberty, the ability to choose rightly, not because it's easy or rewarded, but because it's yours to choose. Epictetus was a slave, Marcus Aurelius an emperor, and yet both spoke of freedom in the same way, as something no man could give or take. It was never about status, it was about sovereignty of the soul. You cannot always choose your circumstances, but you can choose your actions, your values, your courage, and that is where freedom begins, not out there in the world, but inside you, burning like a torch no storm can extinguish. Complaining is a sign of internal slavery. We often think of complaining as harmless, even therapeutic, a release valve for life's pressures. But beneath every complaint lies a deeper truth, an admission of defeat, a confession that we are no longer in command of ourselves. The moment you complain, you declare the world has power over you. You are no longer the author of your response. You are a victim of the plot. Complaining is not just noise. It's a signal that your sense of agency has collapsed under the weight of expectation, entitlement, or resistance to reality. When you whine about the weather, about traffic, about people who don't meet your standards, what you're really saying is, I am helpless. I cannot control this, and I resent that fact. But you were never meant to control the world, only yourself. Stoics knew this well. They didn't suppress discomfort. They rose above it. They practiced the art of internal independence, the ability to maintain composure, direction, and peace, regardless of what storms raged outside. Complaining was seen as spiritual surrender. It was proof that you had become a slave, not to a master, but to emotion, to circumstance, to weakness. Each complaint deepens the groove of helplessness in the mind. It rewires your thoughts to look for what's wrong. It poisons your presence. It stunts your power. To stop complaining is not to deny reality. It is to face it head on with courage and calm. It is to say, this may not be ideal, but I will not become small because of it. Freedom begins where complaint ends. Pleasure is often the bait of pain. Pleasure seduces like a whisper in the dark, promising escape, promising warmth, promising joy without cost. But it rarely speaks of what comes after. It doesn't tell you about the emptiness, the craving, the slow erosion of will. It smiles while it binds. It feeds you just enough to make you need it, then starves you of everything else that matters. What feels good now often carries a hidden tax later. The drink that dulls your mind, the indulgence that weakens your discipline, the praise that swells your ego, all of it feels like freedom in the moment. But you wake up hungover in more ways than one. Stoicism never condemned pleasure outright. It warned against being ruled by it. Because once pleasure becomes your compass, you stop steering. You chase highs. You feed appetites that grow stronger with every bite. You trade strength for softness, clarity for chaos. The world becomes a series of cravings to satisfy, not a path to walk with purpose. Pain is rarely just pain. It's often the price you pay for choosing pleasure without wisdom. The Stoics called this a kind of slavery, being mastered by what tempts you. The irony is sharp. What you think you own ends up owning you. And when the pleasure fades, all you're left with is a weaker version of yourself. True joy doesn't come from surrendering to impulse. It comes from mastery. It comes from choosing what lasts over what lures. Because not every sweet thing is safe, and not every pain is a punishment. Sometimes it's just the bill arriving. The wise person is indifferent to being known as wise. There is a quiet power in the person who does not seek recognition. In a world obsessed with image, praise, and validation, true wisdom retreats into silence, not out of shyness, but out of strength. The wise do not need to be seen as wise. They do not dress in brilliance or announce their virtue. They simply are, and that is enough. To crave the title of wise is to betray the very essence of wisdom. It reveals a hunger, not for truth, but for applause. And that hunger is a crack in the soul. It lets vanity in. It turns philosophy into performance. The wise person does not argue to win, but to understand. They do not flaunt knowledge, they live it. They walk through the world unnoticed because their value doesn't depend on being visible. They correct quietly. They lead subtly. They give without asking to be remembered. Marcus Aurelius ruled the greatest empire of his time, yet wrote reminders to himself in private. Do not be overheard talking about what it means to be a good man. Be one. That is the heartbeat of true wisdom. It seeks no audience. It asks for no praise. It stands calmly in a room full of noise, unmoved by the need to be admired. There is freedom in this. To release the need to be seen is to finally see yourself clearly, not through others' eyes, but your own. The wise don't need to be recognized because they've already recognized themselves. What injures the hive injures the bee. You are not separate. You breathe because others breathe. You move through a world built by hands you'll never shake, protected by laws you didn't write, surrounded by lives that, seen or unseen, touch yours in ways too complex to trace. The illusion of individualism is comforting, but it's a mirage. You are part of something greater, and what harms the whole eventually harms you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What injures the hive injures the bee," not as a metaphor, but as a warning. When we act with selfishness, when we lie, cheat, belittle, or ignore suffering, we weaken the structure we all depend on. Maybe not today, maybe not visibly, but the corrosion begins. The corruption you tolerate in silence, the cruelty you laugh off, the exploitation you justify. It doesn't stay out there. It finds its way in. It pollutes trust. It normalizes rot. It teaches everyone around you that virtue is optional, that the hive doesn't matter. But when the hive begins to collapse, no bee escapes unscathed. We think we can win while others lose. We think stepping on someone else elevates us. But that's not triumph. It's treason, not against them, against ourselves, against the invisible thread that connects each life to the next. To protect the hive is to protect your own future, your families, your children's, your souls. In a world more divided than ever, it's tempting to retreat, to detach, to say, "It's not my problem," but it is, because you live here, because you breathe the same air, because when the hive burns, the smoke finds every wing. You become what you give your attention to. There is no force more quietly transformative or more dangerously underestimated than attention. It is the currency of your soul, the raw material of your becoming. Whatever you feed it to, you begin to resemble. Like a river shapes the land it touches, your focus sculpts your mind, your mood, your destiny. If you spend your days staring into chaos, gossip, outrage, or envy, do not be surprised when those very things take root in you. If you endlessly scroll through the lives of others, your own life begins to feel like a shadow. If your mind is constantly pulled by distractions, pulled by fear, pulled by what's trivial, how can anything meaningful grow? The Stoics knew that attention is not passive, it is power, it is choice. Each moment you are choosing what you become. Every thought you let linger, every scene you replay, every bitterness you nurse becomes a thread in the fabric of your identity. This is why Marcus Aurelius warned himself, "Your mind will take the shape of what you frequently hold in thought, not someday, not eventually, right now. So be ruthless with your gaze. Guard it like your life depends on it, because it does. Turn it towards strength, courage, honesty, stillness. Let your attention be a garden, not a garbage heap. Cultivate what you want to grow inside you, because in the end, you are not what you claim to believe. You are not even what you feel. You are what you consistently look at. It is better to stumble in self-discipline than to excel in indulgence. There is a quiet nobility in the one who tries to master themselves and fails than in the one who never tries and loses themselves to ease. The world will always applaud indulgence. It looks like confidence, like power, like freedom, but it is none of those things. It is a golden cage lined with silk, pleasing to the eye, deadly to the soul. To practice self-discipline is to walk a steep, narrow path with trembling legs. You will fall, you will give in, you will lose battles against temptation, but each stumble is sacred. Each misstep carries the echo of effort, of a war waged deep inside, a war few see, but one that defines who you are becoming. Now look at the one who excels in indulgence, the one who eats, drinks, and consumes without pause. They glow, perhaps, they charm, they entertain, but beneath the surface, something crumbles. Their strength is for sale, their desires have no leash. They live as a slave to what feels good now, at the expense of what matters forever. Stoicism doesn't promise perfection. It praises effort. It honors the man or woman who shows up to the fight every day, bloodied, yes, but unbowed, who says no when it's easier to say yes, who chooses hunger over gluttony, restraint over release, growth over comfort. There is more dignity in one honest attempt to resist than in 1,000 victories won by surrender. Because discipline, even when imperfect, carves character. Indulgence, even when celebrated, rots it. A good character is the only true ornament. You can adorn yourself in gold, wear the finest fabric, speak with perfect eloquence, and still be hollow. You can carry degrees, titles, fame like a crown, and still reek of weakness when no one's watching. Appearances are cheap, character is earned. In a world obsessed with image, the Stoics whispered a different truth. What you are matters more than what you seem. A person of good character doesn't need embellishment. Their presence speaks before their words. Their integrity leaves an impression no jewelry ever could. Character is not something you put on. It is something you forge, moment by moment, choice by choice. It is how you act when it's inconvenient, how you speak when no one will praise you, how you treat those who can do nothing for you. It is not shaped by spotlight, but by solitude. The Stoics believe that external beauty fades, fortune changes hands, reputation rises and falls, but virtue endures. You can't fake resilience under pressure. You can't Photoshop honor. You can't rent courage in the face of loss. These things are grown, quietly, painfully, inwardly. A good character is not flashy, it is not loud, but it is unforgettable. It makes people trust you without knowing why. It makes enemies hesitate and friends stay. It gives weight to your words, depth to your silence, and power to your presence. All other ornaments can be stolen, lost, or outshined. But character? Character is the one possession that, once built, no world can take from you. It is the truest form of beauty because it cannot be worn, only lived. Exile, poverty, and even death are nothing to fear. Vice is. We tremble before the wrong gods, the loss of money, the fear of exile, the shadow of death. These haunt us like predators in the dark, but they are illusions. Stripped of our fears, they are simply changes in circumstance, not character. The Stoics understood this with brutal clarity. What is external cannot defile you, but what grows within you, that can destroy you from the inside out. Poverty might empty your pockets, but vice empties your soul. Exile may steal your home, but not your values. Death may stop your heart, but not your legacy. Only vice, cowardice, cruelty, arrogance, dishonor can turn a noble life into a wasted one. People spend their lives chasing security, hoarding comfort, fleeing every form of discomfort like it's poison. But comfort isn't virtue, and fear isn't protection. You can be wealthy and wicked, praised and pathetic, alive but already decaying inside. That's the tragedy, thinking we're safe because the world hasn't collapsed around us, while inside we rot with bitterness, envy, lies. Epictetus was a slave. Seneca faced exile. Marcus Aurelius ruled in plague and war, but they feared none of it, not because they were blind, but because they knew the real enemy was always closer, always inside. You might lose everything tomorrow, your home, your status, your health, but if you still have your virtue, if you can still act with courage, truth, and justice, you have lost nothing that defines you. And if you gain the world but abandon your soul, you have gained nothing that matters. Happiness is not found, but forged. We are taught to chase happiness like it's a destination, something waiting out there, just beyond the next success, the next relationship, the next escape. We imagine it buried in a better job, a bigger house, a thinner body, a louder applause. And so we run. We run toward dreams that fade when reached. We run from pain that returns in new form, and we wonder why joy keeps slipping through our fingers. But the Stoics offered a brutal, beautiful truth. Happiness is not something you find. It's something you build. It is not handed to you. It is hammered, tested, shaped in the fires of discipline and choice. It comes not from avoiding hardship, but from facing it well, not from comfort, but from character, not from having, but from being. The world will tell you happiness is a product, a purchase, a reward. But that's a lie sold by those who profit from your discontent. Real happiness doesn't come from adding more. It comes from needing less, from living in alignment with your values, from waking up and being able to look at your own soul without flinching. You won't stumble into this kind of happiness. You must forge it. Every day, in small decisions no one applauds, in the discipline to do what's right, even when it's hard, in the refusal to betray yourself, even when no one's watching. The joy you're looking for isn't hiding. It's waiting to be earned, not by chance, not by luck, but by fire. Events do not disturb us, only our judgments about them. The world doesn't hurt you. Not really, not directly. It moves, it happens, it unfolds with storms and silences, gifts and grief, none of which carry intention or malice. What hurts, what truly shakes us, is the meaning we pour into those events, the stories we tell ourselves, the labels we assign like verdicts: unfair, tragic, unbearable, ruin. But these are not facts, they are interpretations, and interpretations can be rewritten. You miss the train and call it a disaster. Someone leaves you and you label yourself unlovable. You lose your job and decide you are worthless. But none of these events said any of those things. You did. You made yourself bleed with your own judgment. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." That truth is terrifying and liberating. Terrifying because it means your suffering might be your own creation. Liberating because it means you hold the power to end it. You can't control the universe, but you can control what it means to you. A flat tire is a delay or a moment of silence. A betrayal is a wound or a teacher. A failure is a loss or a redirection. You choose every time. You decide whether the arrow pierces your skin or your spirit. This doesn't mean denying pain. It means not becoming it. It means standing in the wreckage and refusing to call yourself broken. Because life may hit hard, but your judgment hits deeper, and it's the only weapon you never have to pick up. You are only harmed if you believe you are harmed. Pain enters first through the world, but it only wounds if you let it enter the soul. A harsh word, a betrayal, a loss, an insult, these things strike the body, the senses, the ego. But the damage, that's done by your judgment of them. What you feel is not what happened, it's what you've decided it means. The Stoics understood this with chilling clarity. Nothing can harm you unless you agree to be harmed. You could be struck down, laughed at, slandered, exiled, and still remain untouched where it matters most. Why? Because your mind is sovereign. Your dignity is not on loan from anyone. The meaning you assign to events is what creates suffering, not the events themselves. Epictetus was a slave, yet he wrote, "Who then is invincible? He who cannot be upset by anything outside his reasoned choice." That's not delusion, that's dominion. To be immune, not because the world is kind, but because you no longer hand over the keys to your peace. Think of the last time someone hurt you. Was it their action or your interpretation? Was it their words or your belief in them? If someone throws a burning coal and you catch it, it burns. But if you let it fall, it's just smoke in the wind. This is not weakness. This is power. The power to say, "You may reach my skin, my circumstances, my body, but you do not touch my essence unless I let you, and I won't." Live according to nature, not nature's whims, but its reason. To live according to nature is not to chase every impulse, every appetite, every instinct that flickers in the body. That is not nature. It is chaos dressed as freedom. True nature, as the Stoics knew, is not what is wild in you, but what is wise. It is not the storm. It is the structure that holds during the storm. You were born not merely to feel, but to think, not merely to desire, but to discern. You are not just a creature of the earth, but a citizen of reason. The same force that governs the stars is alive in your mind. The spark of logos, the divine rationality that separates man from beast, impulse from purpose. To live according to nature is to live in harmony with that reason. It is to rise each day not asking, "What do I want?" but "What is right?" It means aligning your actions not with craving, but with conscience, not with convenience, but with character. This path is not always pleasant. Nature does not promise comfort. It promises order. It demands sacrifice. It requires mastery, over the self. It commands you to stand still when your instincts scream run, to speak truth when silence feels safer, to act justly even when you could get away with less. When you live by nature's reason, you become unshakable, because no wind can move what is rooted in truth, no pleasure can tempt what is anchored in purpose, and no fear can break what was built by design. Even silence is a form of speech. Let it be virtuous. Silence is never empty. It is not the absence of words. It is the presence of meaning, often more powerful than anything spoken aloud. In every room, in every conflict, in every pause, silence speaks. The only question is what it says about you. There is the silence of cowardice, the one that avoids truth to keep the peace. There is the silence of pride, the one that refuses to admit fault. There is the silence of cruelty, the one that lets injustice go unchecked. And then there is the silence of virtue, measured, grounded, unshaken by noise. The Stoics revered this kind of silence, not as retreat, but as restraint, to hold the tongue when anger swells, to absorb an insult without returning fire, to withhold judgment when others rush to it. This is not weakness. This is discipline in its rarest form. In a world obsessed with talking, posting, proving, defending, silence has become a forgotten language. But silence can protect dignity, sharpen focus, preserve truth. It can stop a conflict from erupting. It can turn attention inward, where the real battle is always being fought. Your silence tells people who you are just as much as your words do. When you stay quiet, you reveal your strength or your fear, your peace or your passivity. You cannot not speak. Even stillness sends a message. So choose it wisely. Let your silence reflect your principles, not your avoidance. Let it hold weight, not cowardice. Let it be the kind of silence that makes others listen harder, because it comes from someone who could speak, but chose not to. True wealth is not needing much. We are taught to chase. From the moment we open our eyes to the world, we're shown images of more money, more possessions, more status, more recognition. And so we run, faster, harder, always grasping, always comparing, always convinced that the next thing will finally be enough. But it never is, because needing more is the curse that keeps wealth just out of reach. The Stoics saw through this illusion. They understood that poverty isn't the absence of things, it's the endless hunger for them. And wealth isn't what you own, it's what you can live without. The man who needs little is freer than kings, richer than millionaires, because his peace isn't held hostage by craving. True wealth is being able to sit in a quiet room, alone, and feel full. It is drinking water and calling it sufficient. It is walking under the sky and not needing a roof made of gold. It is never begging the world to validate your worth with upgrades, likes, or applause. The rich man who is terrified to lose his riches lives in fear. The poor man who wants nothing lives in freedom. Needing less doesn't mean living without. It means living with intention. It means every possession serves you, not the other way around. It means stripping life down to its essentials and finding they were beautiful all along. When your happiness is no longer tied to acquisition, you become untouchable, because no thief can steal what you don't need, and no world can bankrupt a soul already content. Philosophy should be lived, not merely discussed. There is a seduction in speaking wisely, to quote the greats, to debate ethics, to argue morality as if virtue were a chess game. It flatters the intellect. It paints the illusion of depth. But the Stoics had no patience for beautiful words without action. They did not sit around trying to sound wise. They tried to become so. Philosophy, to them, was not an academic exercise. It was a way of surviving, a way of waking up every day and choosing who to be when life was brutal, when fortune turned, when death came close. It wasn't a lecture. It was a lifeline. You can read every book, memorize every quote, recite every teaching, but if your behavior remains unchanged, none of it matters. if you lose your temper when provoked, if you envy when overlooked, if you crumble at discomfort, then all your knowledge is a costume. Philosophy isn't how well you speak, it's how well you endure. Seneca wrote about this with razor clarity. Philosophy teaches us to act, not to speak. It demands you become a living example of what you claim to believe, to be honest when lying would be easier, to be kind when you've been wounded, to be principled when no one is watching. That is the real test, not how you talk when things are calm, but how you live when they're not. Philosophy means nothing if it stays on the page. It must seep into your choices, your habits, your silence, your strength. Otherwise, it's just noise, elegant, hollow noise. Kindness is invincible if genuine. There is a quiet force that moves through the world unnoticed, not loud, not dramatic, not armored in pride or sharpened like anger. It is kindness, real kindness, the kind that expects nothing, needs no recognition, and comes not from weakness or performance, but from deep, disciplined strength. This kind of kindness is not soft. It is steel wrapped in silk. It cannot be broken. When someone insults you and you do not retaliate, but respond with calm. When someone dismisses you and you do not beg for approval, but remain steady. When others bring fire and you offer light, that is invincible kindness. Not because it always wins, but because it cannot be touched. It does not bend to cruelty. It does not shrink in the face of ego. The Stoics believe that if your kindness is rooted in truth, not flattery, not people-pleasing, not manipulation, then no force can corrupt it, because it is self-sufficient. It does not depend on how others act. It is who you choose to be, no matter how the world behaves. This is what makes it powerful. It exposes the smallness in others without shaming them. It disarms the hostile. It quiets the arrogant. It reveals your soul, not as naive, but as unconquered. But it must be real. Forced kindness is a mask, and people feel it. Performative goodness is brittle, but kindness born from principle, from the decision to live above pettiness and beneath no one, that is immortal. They can mock it, they can reject it, but they cannot destroy it, because what comes from within cannot be taken away. Blame no one, not even yourself. Blame feels righteous. It gives us a target, a name, a reason. When things fall apart, we look for someone to hold accountable. Our parents, the government, our partner, fate, the stranger who cut us off, even God. And when no one else will do, we turn the knife inward. We punish ourselves. We call it honesty, responsibility, justice. But really, it's just another form of bondage. The Stoics saw blame for what it is, a distraction, an escape from the truth that the world is not always fair and you are not always in control. Blaming others keeps you bitter. Blaming yourself keeps you broken. Both keep you stuck. What if you stopped needing someone to blame? What if you looked at your pain, your mistakes, your misfortunes, not as failures to be punished, but as facts to be faced? Blame is noise. It delays the work. It feeds resentment, paralyzes growth, and clouds the mind. It says, I shouldn't be here, but you are here. So now what? To blame no one, not even yourself, is not to pretend nothing went wrong. It is to step into clarity without chains. It is to say, this happened, I accept it, now I respond, without fury, without shame, without spinning stories of guilt or injustice. This isn't softness, it's strength, because when you no longer need a villain, even if that villain is you, you become free, free to act, to heal, to rise, blame nothing, own everything, and move. An insult only stings if you value the opinion of the insulter. Words are just sound, air shaped by a tongue, and yet some of them slice through us like blades, cutting deeper than steel ever could. But here's the truth that most never dare to face. An insult only has power if you hand it the sword. It only wounds if you choose to believe it matters. The Stoics knew that offense is not given, it is taken. If a stranger calls you worthless, You bleed only if you agree somewhere deep down. If a fool mocks your path, you feel the sting only if their opinion holds weight in your heart. But why should it? Why should the noise of someone disconnected from your values, your journey, your truth, echo so loudly inside you? It's not the insult that hurts, it's your attachment to the source. Imagine a madman shouting nonsense in the street. Would you take it personally? No, you'd walk on untouched. But if the same words come from someone you've elevated, someone whose approval you crave, they burrow under your skin. The pain isn't from the words, it's from the meaning you assign to the speaker. Freedom is found in disarming that reflex, in realizing that your worth is not up for debate, not in the hands of strangers, not vulnerable to mockery. You decide whose voice gets access to your soul. Let the world speak. Let the petty throw stones. Their aim only matters if you stand still. You are only insulted if you believe the insulter holds truth. If they don't, let their words dissolve like smoke. The obstacle is not only not the enemy, it is the path. We are taught to see obstacles as intruders, unwelcome visitors on the road to our goals. A sudden illness, a betrayal, a failure, a delay. They arrive unannounced and instantly feel like walls meant to stop us. We tighten up, we get angry, we ask, why now, why me? But the Stoics saw something radical hiding behind the pain. The obstacle was never blocking the path, it was the path. Life doesn't test you by taking you off course. It reveals the course through the test. Every difficulty is a forge. Every setback is instruction. The obstacle shows you where you are weak, where you are impatient, where you lack discipline or clarity. It is not cruelty. It is a mirror. It is an invitation. Marcus Aurelius wrote with devastating simplicity, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That is not poetry. That is survival. That is how you rise. Because strength isn't built in comfort. It's built when things go wrong. Wisdom isn't born from ease. It's carved out by adversity. And courage? Courage shows up when everything inside you screams to turn back and you don't. The obstacle does not punish you. It reveals you. It demands your attention. It calls out your excuses. And if you answer it, if you face it, if you move through it, you come out different, sharper, stronger, unshakable. Don't curse the stone in your path. Step onto it. That's where the road begins. Practice misfortune in advance so that fortune never shakes you. What if everything vanished tomorrow? The money, the house, the praise, the security. Would you shatter or stand? Most people live as if comfort is permanent, as if fortune is loyal. But fortune is a liar. She smiles with one hand and steals with the other, and those who never prepare for her departure are always broken by it. The Stoics had a weapon for this, premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evil. They would imagine misfortune before it struck, not to summon fear, but to strip fear of its teeth. They would sleep on the floor, though they had beds, wear rough clothes, though they had silk, go hungry, though their table was full. Because strength is not built in abundance. It is forged in deliberate scarcity. We think security comes from having more. It doesn't. It comes from needing less. When you rehearse loss, you rob it of its power. You remind yourself that survival does not depend on luxury, that your dignity is not tied to status, that your identity does not collapse with your paycheck. You become shockproof, not cold, but unshakable, because you've already been there. You've already lived the worst in your mind and learned, I am still whole. To practice misfortune is not pessimism. It is preparation. It is walking through fire in your imagination so that when the real flames rise, you don't run, you breathe. And when fortune inevitably turns her back, you won't beg her to return. You'll already be free. Be strict with yourself, gentle with others. There is a quiet nobility in the person who demands more from themselves than they demand from anyone else. In a world quick to judge, quick to criticize, quick to punish, the The Stoic chooses another way. They turn the blade inward, not with cruelty, but with discipline. They hold themselves to a higher standard, not for applause, but for integrity. And yet, when it comes to others, they soften, they listen, they forgive, they give grace where the world would give shame. To be strict with yourself is to know your own weakness and choose not to indulge it. It's waking up early when no one asks you to. It's telling the truth even when it would be easier to lie. It's controlling your temper when it begs to be unleashed. It's being accountable, not because someone's watching, but because you are. But others, they are fighting battles you cannot see. They stumble in ways you've never had to. They carry wounds that don't show. The Stoic sees this and chooses mercy, not because they excuse wrong, but because they understand it. Judging others is easy. Transforming yourself is sacred. This way of living demands humility. You are not the center of the moral universe. You are a student forever. So you push yourself not with self-hatred, but with fierce love. And when someone else falls short, you reach for compassion, not condemnation. Be your own hardest critic and everyone else's quiet refuge. That's what Stoicism looks like in motion. Strength held in one hand, softness in the other. If you wish to be loved, love. We spend our lives yearning to be seen, understood, chosen. We ache to feel loved, not just liked or wanted, but deeply, unshakably loved. So we wait, we perform, we chase, we ask silently, "Do you see me? Will you love me now?" But Stoicism turns this longing on its head. If you wish to be loved, love. Not as a strategy, not as a bargain. Love not to earn, but to express. Not to possess, but to liberate. Because the moment you give love without needing it in return, you become powerful. You become the source. Love is not a transaction. It's a reflection. What you give out into the world echoes back, but not always from the direction you expect. You may love someone who never returns it. You may show kindness and receive silence, but it doesn't matter, because loving is not weakness. It is creation. It is the decision to pour light into a dark world, even if no one holds a mirror. The Stoic loves not because others deserve it, but because they deserve to live as someone who loves. To crave love without giving it is to thirst while guarding the well. It is to ask life to bless you while cursing its children. But to love, to show up with open hands, open words, open presence, is to set a fire in the cold and let it burn whether others join or not. And in time, the world returns what it's been shown, because nothing awakens love more surely than being loved first, with no demand, no fear, no condition, just love. Reason must guide instinct, not the other way around. There is a voice inside you that reacts before you even know what you feel. It flinches, lashes out, desires, panics, craves, retreats. This is instinct, raw, ancient, fast. It once kept you alive in the wild. Now it threatens to undo you in the quiet. Instinct is not evil. It is simply untamed. It surges up when you're insulted, when you're afraid, when you're tempted. It wants revenge. It wants pleasure. It wants escape. And if you let it lead, it will drive you into chaos with conviction. But you were not born only to survive. You were born to rise. The Stoics taught that what separates us from the beasts is reason, not just the ability to think, but the discipline to pause, to interrupt the storm inside with a single powerful question. Is this right? Reason is the hand on the wheel. Instinct is the engine. One gives direction, the other gives force. If you reverse the order, you crash. To let reason lead is not to kill emotion. It is to govern it. It is to feel anger and choose patience, to feel desire and choose restraint, to feel fear and still move forward. This is not suppression. It is sovereignty. It is not coldness. It is clarity. When reason rules, you are not tossed by the waves. You become the one steering through them. Instinct screams. Reason whispers. Learn to hear the whisper. That is where your power lives, not in reacting first, but in choosing best. Even emperors must die, therefore learn to die well. Death is the only certainty. It comes for beggars and kings alike. It silences the wise, the cruel, the forgotten, the adored. Even emperors, those who ruled with armies, sculpted history, bent nations to their will, are stripped bare in the end. Their titles vanish, their palaces crumble, their names fade, and all that remains is how they met the end, with fear or with grace. The Stoics did not turn away from death. They stared it down, not morbidly, but soberly, because only by accepting death can you truly begin to live. They believed that death is not the enemy, it is the mirror. It shows you what matters. It burns away illusion. It forces the question, what am I building that can survive the fire? To learn to die well is to live without wasting time. It is to speak truth now, to love now, to forgive, to act, to dare now. Because every sunrise is a countdown. Every breath is a gift you don't get to keep. Most live as if they're immortal, putting off meaning for later. But later isn't promised, and the ones who understand this don't live in panic. They live in focus. You don't have to wait for a diagnosis, a funeral, a close call. Death already walks beside you. But if you walk with it, learn from it, respect it, you will not beg when it arrives. You will nod. You will say, I am ready, because you did not just breathe, you lived. The good man is invincible because he yields nothing to fortune. There are people who crumble the moment life turns. They lose a job, a relationship, a dream, and everything inside them breaks. Their joy, their peace, their sense of worth, gone, as if it was never truly theirs, because it wasn't. It belonged to fortune. It was built on what they could not control. But the Stoic is untouchable, not because life spares him, but because he has nothing to lose that matters more than who he is. The good man, truly good, not performatively, not temporarily, builds his life inward. His character is his fortress. His values are not rented from society, but rooted in reason. So when fortune takes, it does not break him. It only reveals him. If he is stripped of wealth, he remains rich in principle. If he is slandered, his silence speaks louder than the lies. If he is struck down, he falls with dignity, not disgrace. Seneca wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. The good man has nothing that fate can steal, because what he values lies outside its reach. He does not seek to manipulate the winds. He becomes the kind of vessel that withstands them. You cannot defeat a man who's already given up needing what the world controls. His strength is not armor, it's essence. Unshakable, undeniable, unbreakable, he walks through storms untouched, not because the storm is small, but because he is vast. Train your desires to want what already is. Desire is a fire that never stops burning unless you command it. Most people spend their entire lives aching for what's ahead, what's missing, what they've convinced themselves they need to be happy. A bigger house, a different body, a louder name. But the Stoics taught a different path, one that doesn't smother desire, but recalibrates it. You don't need to kill your longing. You need to teach it to long for what's already yours. Look around. Your heart is still beating. Your lungs fill without asking. There is air, warmth, water, thought, and yet you ache for something else, something more, as if joy lives only in what you don't yet have. This is the illusion that keeps humanity restless, the belief that happiness is out there, always just beyond reach. But what if the problem is not with your life, but with what you expect from it? The Stoic trains their desire like a wild animal, patiently, consistently, until it no longer lunges for every shiny thing, but sits calmly in the presence of enough. They look at what is in front of them and say, "This is what I choose to want, not out of resignation, but out of power." You can't always control what the world gives, but you can always choose what you value, And when you shift your desire to match your reality, you stop suffering, you stop chasing ghosts. And in that quiet moment, when want becomes gratitude, you realize you already stand in everything you once hoped for. You control only your choices, not the outcome. There is a cruel kind of heartbreak that lives in the space between effort and result. You do everything right, plan, sacrifice, give your all, and still it falls apart. The job goes to someone else. The relationship fades. The goal slips through your fingers, and it feels like failure, like betrayal, like the universe is laughing behind your back. But the Stoics looked at this moment with different eyes. They knew that control is an illusion, at least the kind most people chase. You don't control outcomes. You never did. You only control you, your decisions, your mindset, your response. That is where your freedom lives. That is where your worth lives. You plant the seed, you water it, you care for it, but you do not control the sun or the soil. The outcome, whether it blossoms or withers, is not yours to command. What is yours is the act itself, to show up fully, to act with virtue, to try with honor, even when the world refuses to reward you. This is the dividing line between peace and torment. If you believe success is measured by results, life will break you. But if you measure it by how you showed up, then no one can take that from you. Epictetus said, "Make the best use of what is in your power and take the rest as it happens." This isn't apathy, it's clarity. When you let go of needing to win, you begin to live with calm. You become dangerous to misfortune because you can lose the game and still win yourself. Do nothing reluctantly. Reluctance is the soul's quiet rebellion. It is the sigh before the action, the hesitation behind the words, the dragging of feet through a life that deserves your full stride. When you act reluctantly, you fracture yourself. You move your body, but not your spirit. You show up, but hollow. You comply, but your presence is a ghost. And that is not living. It is emotional exile from your own choices. The Stoics believe that true power lies not just in what you do, but in how you do it. Every task, every duty, every moment, whether glorious or mundane, should be met with full assent, with the heart aligned to the hand. Not because you love every moment, but because you choose to stand fully in it. If you must sweep the floor, sweep like it matters. If you must face pain, meet it with eyes wide open. If you must carry a burden, lift it with dignity, not complaint. To do something reluctantly is to resist what already is, and resistance to reality only ever multiplies suffering. You create drag in your own spirit. You grind against life rather than flowing with it. Even hardship, when accepted, transforms. The same cold rain that chills the unwilling can cleanse the willing. The same labor that exhausts the bitter can strengthen the serene. Reluctance weakens, but when you bring full consent, even to the unwanted, you reclaim control. You say, "This is mine now. I do not suffer it. I choose it." And in that moment, you become unstoppable, not because the task changes, but because you do. Act with a reserve clause. If fate permits, we plan, we strive, we set our eyes on a future we think we deserve. And then life happens. A delay, a betrayal, a diagnosis, a twist no map could predict. Suddenly, everything we gripped with certainty shatters, and we're left stunned, not just by the loss, but by our disbelief that it could be lost. The Stoics had a shield against this despair, the reserve clause, "if fate permits," a quiet phrase, a whispered truth sewn into every intention, not to weaken resolve, but to humble it, not to surrender effort, but to protect the soul from arrogance. When you act with a reserve clause, you give your best, but you don't pretend to command the stars. You aim for the goal, but you understand the outcome is not yours alone. You train, you speak, you love, you build, but always with the understanding, I will, if it is meant to be. I act, but the result is not mine. This is not defeatism. It's defiance against delusion. It's armor for the soul. Without the reserve clause, disappointment becomes devastation, but with it, failure becomes acceptance. Success becomes gratitude. You remain upright no matter what happens, because you never expected the world to bend to your will. You only expected yourself to show up with honor. Say it quietly before each action. If fate permits, let it be the thread that ties your ambition to your humility. That way, even when fate says no, you are not broken. You are still intact, because you never made the outcome your identity. Cling to your principles, not your possessions. When the fire comes, and it always comes, it doesn't ask what you own. It doesn't care about your titles, your wardrobe, your home, or your bank account. It comes for everything that rusts, burns, rots, or slips through fingers. And in that moment, only one thing will define you: what you refused to let go of inside. Your principles are the only things that cannot be stolen. They don't depreciate. They don't fade with fashion or collapse with markets. They are the architecture of your soul. And yet, most people spend their lives clutching at things they could lose in a blink, while letting go of the values that make those things mean something. You may be admired for your wealth, feared for your power, envied for your looks. But if you abandon honesty to gain those things, if you trade justice for status or loyalty for gain, you may win the world, but you will lose the right to look yourself in the mirror. The Stoics taught that possessions are indifferent. They are tools, not anchors, useful when aligned with virtue, dangerous when mistaken for identity. There will be moments, tests, when life asks you to choose your comfort or your conscience, your safety or your soul. And if you've built your life around what you own, you will break. But if you've built your life around what you stand for, you will stand. Because thieves can rob you, fires can erase your home, but nothing can take away what you refuse to sell. Cling to that. Cling to you. The highest form of freedom is self-mastery. We chase freedom like it's something outside of us. More time, more money, no boss, no rules, no restrictions. But what we call freedom is often just another form of dependency on comfort, on indulgence, on escape. We want to be free from things. The Stoics taught us instead to be free within them. Real freedom isn't the absence of limits. It's the presence of control, not over the world, but over yourself. Self-mastery is the ability to rule your own impulses, to command your desires instead of being dragged by them, to choose your response even when emotion roars, to say no to temptation, not because you're forced to, but because you decide to. The person who cannot say no to another drink, another dopamine hit, another angry outburst is not free. They are shackled by habit, by emotion, by ego. They are a puppet pulled by invisible strings. But the one who governs themselves, they cannot be owned. Not by people, not by pleasure, not by pain. You could strip everything from them and they would remain intact because their power lives within, not in circumstance. Marcus Aurelius ruled the known world, yet warned himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That is where freedom is born, not in having what you want, but in not needing it, not in control over others, but in control over self. Self-mastery is not cold, it is not rigid, it is fire held in a steady hand, and it is the only kind of freedom the world cannot take from you. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. The mind is a battlefield, and for most, the war isn't with the world, it's with what might happen, what could go wrong, what they might think. We rehearse tragedies that haven't occurred. We write chapters of pain that will never be read. We bleed from wounds that haven't even happened. And while life moves quietly around us, we suffer in a theater of our own making. Seneca said it plainly, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality, because fear lives not in the moment, but in the possibility of the moment. The phone rings, and we imagine death, a look from someone, and we construct rejection, a delay in results, and we spiral into catastrophe. The reality still unfolding, the pain invented. The Stoics didn't deny danger. They denied its power before it arrives. They trained their minds to stay in the present, not the haunted house of what if, but the solid floor of what is. And the truth is, most of what we dread never comes, and if it does, it rarely comes the way we feared. But in imagining every worst-case scenario, we suffer twice, once in dread, and again if it happens. That is not strength. That is surrender to shadows. Freedom begins when you stop letting imagination hijack reality. When you face the actual moment, not the imagined one, you realize it's lighter than the weight you carried. The lion is smaller up close, and your mind is not your enemy unless you let it be. Don't seek praise, seek to be praiseworthy. There is an emptiness in praise that's chaste. You feel it after the applause fades, after the compliment is spoken, after the approval lands, and then vanishes like smoke. Praise, when sought, becomes a drug. The more you get, the more you need. You start adjusting your actions to what draws claps, not to what builds character. You lose yourself, smile by smile, likability by likability. The Stoics warned against this hunger. They knew that to live for recognition is to live on lease. Your worth becomes a mirror, cracked and held in someone else's hand. You're only as valuable as the last compliment. You rise and fall by the moods of others. But to be praiseworthy, to act with honor, even in silence, that is different. That is rare. That is unshakable. It means doing the right thing when no one is watching. It means telling the truth when a lie would get you further. It means walking the harder road because it is yours, not because it's admired. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, ambition means tying your well-being to what other people say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. He ruled the world, yet sought only to rule himself. Be the kind of person you'd respect if you were invisible. Let your life earn praise, not beg for it, because the world may never notice your quiet virtue, but you will, and in that knowledge, in that self-respect, there is a peace that applause could never match. Build your life for truth, not for trophies. Every day is a new opportunity to improve your soul. You don't need a new year. You don't need a perfect sunrise, a sign from the universe, or a calendar to realign. You only need today, not because today is special, but because it exists, and in that alone lies its power. While others wait for the right moment, the Stoic seizes the current one, not to chase pleasure, but to become better. Every single day, no matter how ordinary, is a sacred invitation to sharpen your character, to examine your thoughts, to speak more truth, to hold your temper, to give without applause, to reflect, refine, and rise, if only by a fraction. This is soul work, not loud, not dramatic, but deeply, quietly transformative. Improving the soul doesn't happen in some grand gesture. It happens when you say no to gossip, when you hold the door for someone who doesn't say thank you, when you resist the urge to respond with venom, when you read instead of scroll, forgive instead of fester, wait instead of explode. The tragedy is not that people fall short, it's that they stop trying. They let the past define their future. They say, "This is just who I am," as if growth is reserved for saints or sages. But the Stoic rejects that lie. You are not fixed. You are not done. You are not stuck. Your soul is clay, and every sunrise places the tools back in your hands. The question is never, can I change? The question is, will I begin today? Your opinion shapes your experience. The world doesn't come to you as it is. It comes to you as you are. Two people can walk through the same moment, hear the same words, lose the same job, feel the same rain, and leave with entirely different stories. Why? Because it's not what happens that defines the experience. It's what you believe about what happens. Your opinion is the lens, the color, the weight. It shapes everything. The Stoics knew this deeply. Epictetus said, It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. This isn't just philosophy, it's power. Because if your suffering comes from interpretation, then so does your freedom. You think you're crushed because someone left? Maybe. Or maybe you're free now. You think you failed because the plan collapsed? Or maybe you just cleared space for a better one. You think life is unfair? Maybe it's just unfolding, indifferent to your preferences, waiting to see what you'll do with it. You don't control the storm, but you control the story you tell about it. That story becomes your experience. That story becomes you. This is not denial. This is transformation. You are not helpless. You are not a victim of reality. You are the interpreter of it, the artist, the author. In every moment you draw breath, you hold the pen. If you want to change your life, start not with the world, but with how you see the world, what you believe about it, because pain is real, but suffering is often just opinion, given too much power. Let death be your advisor, not your fear. Most people run from death. They whisper about it, hide it behind euphemisms, treat it like a distant storm they'll never have to weather. But it comes, silently, unapologetically, unmoved by your plans, your youth, your unfinished dreams. And the more you flee from it, the more power it has over you, haunting your nights, pressuring your days, turning your life into a countdown instead of a masterpiece. But the Stoics didn't flinch. They invited death to walk beside them, not as a monster, but as a mentor. Because when you remember that you will die, you stop wasting time pretending you won't. You stop putting off the hard conversations. You stop numbing yourself with distraction. You stop measuring your life by what you accumulate and start measuring it by how deeply you live. Let death advise you, not paralyze you. Ask yourself, if today were the last time I saw this sky, this person, this breath, what would I say differently? What would I stop postponing? What would I finally do with courage instead of hesitation? You don't have to fear death to respect it. In fact, fearing it blinds you. It makes you desperate, hollow, obsessed with clinging. But when you accept its presence, when you let it stand at your side like a silent guide, you start making decisions that matter. You live with fire, with urgency, with clarity. Because death is not the end of meaning. It is the beginning of intention. And those who walk with it, unafraid, leave nothing wasted behind. Speak little and only of what is necessary. Words are cheap until you learn their cost. Every careless sentence is a leak in your dignity. Every rant, every gossip, every pointless flourish is a withdrawal from the account of your integrity. The Stoics didn't just value silence. They saw it as discipline, as armor, as a filter for the soul. To speak little is not to withhold, it is to refine. The world is noisy. People talk to fill space, to ease anxiety, to be seen, to be liked. But when you say less, your words begin to carry weight. When you speak only what is needed, your voice becomes something people lean in for, not because it's loud, but because it's measured. Epictetus warned, let silence be your goal for the most part. Say only what is necessary and in few words, not because talking is wrong, but because talking without purpose is a kind of self-betrayal. It reveals where you've lost control. It exposes where you're led by ego, not clarity. To speak little is not about repression. It's about precision. It's choosing not to waste breath on what doesn't matter. It's resisting the urge to explain yourself when you don't have to. It's pausing before reacting and responding only when the moment calls for something real. And when you do speak, your words land like arrows, sharp, calm, unforgettable. Say less, mean more. Let your presence speak louder than your mouth. In a world desperate to be heard, silence, when chosen, is a kind of power that echoes. Practice virtue without an audience. In a world addicted to performance, goodness has become theater. Kindness is posted. Generosity is filmed. Courage is branded. We live not just to act well, but to be seen acting well. But the Stoics had no interest in applause. They believe the truest virtue blooms in silence, when no one is watching, when no reward waits at the end of the gesture. To practice virtue without an audience is to live with integrity so deep it doesn't need validation. You hold the door when no one's there to praise you. You tell the truth when a lie would win. You give when no spotlight will shine, not because it feels good, not because it gets you anything, but because it's right, and that's enough. This kind of virtue is rare because it can't be monetized. It won't trend. It won't fill your inbox with affirmation, but it is the most powerful form of strength. It is the quiet hammer that builds character, one silent act at a time. The Stoics knew that character, built in secret, becomes unshakable in public. You don't rise to your values when the world tests you. You fall to the level of your preparation. And if your virtue was only ever a show, you'll crumble. But if you've been kind when there was no audience, just when it cost you, honest when no one could catch you, then your soul is not for sale. It is forged. Be good, especially when no one will ever know, because you will. And that's who you have to live with. The quality of your thoughts determines the quality of your life. You can have everything, success, health, love, comfort, and still feel like you're drowning. Or you can have nothing but your breath and your bare hands and feel unshakably alive. The difference isn't in the world, it's in your mind. What you think shapes what you see, and what you see becomes your reality. Your thoughts are not just passing clouds, they are architects. They build the rooms you live in. A bitter mind creates a bitter life. A fearful mind sees danger in every corner. A resentful mind keeps old wounds fresh, like they just happened. But a disciplined mind, a mind rooted in reason, in virtue, in calm, that mind creates freedom. That mind builds peace, even in chaos. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. He was emperor of the known world and still feared his own mind more than any enemy, because he knew no battle outside could ever match the war within. You become what you repeatedly think. If your inner voice is cruel, your world will feel hostile. If it's hopeful, even hardship feels like ground to grow on. You can't control every thought that appears, but you can choose which ones stay, which ones you feed, which ones you build your identity around. So guard your mind like a sacred fire. Feed it truth, discipline, beauty, purpose, because your thoughts are not invisible. They cast shadows across your entire life. Make them worthy of the world you want to live in. Courage is not loud, it is enduring. We often mistake noise for bravery, the shouting, the chest beating, the grand gestures of defiance. But real courage doesn't demand attention. It doesn't posture or perform. Real courage is quiet. It is enduring. It's the choice to show up again and again, not because it's easy, not because you're unafraid, but because your values matter more than your comfort. The Stoics never defined courage as the absence of fear. They saw it as the refusal to be ruled by it. It's the single mother who rises every morning, exhausted and keeps going. The man who tells the truth knowing it will cost him everything. The person who sits in grief but does not let it turn them cruel. That is courage, not dramatic, but indestructible. To endure is to carry your burden without complaint, to bleed without bitterness, to walk into uncertainty without guarantees. You don't need to roar, you need only to remain with your integrity intact and your head unbowed. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is take another step. Stay in the fight. Keep your word. Hold the line when everything in you wants to run. That is the courage Stoicism demands. Not the kind that looks heroic, but the kind that is. The world may never cheer for that kind of courage. It may go unnoticed, but you will know. And in the darkest hours, when strength is needed most, you'll find it was never volume that made you brave. It was your refusal to quit. The wise man loses nothing if he loses all but his character. Strip him of wealth, tear away his status, Burn the home, silence the praise, betray his trust. Still, the wise man remains whole, because what he values, the world cannot touch. His treasure is not in what he has, but in who he is, and that kind of wealth is invincible. The world teaches you to hold tight to externals, titles, possessions, followers, control. It whispers, "This is what makes you someone," and so you grip tighter, afraid of loss, afraid of change. But every treasure the world gives, it can take away. One accident, one crisis, one turn of fate, and it's gone. The Stoics lived in defiance of that fear. They saw true security not in what surrounds you, but in what guides you. Character, your integrity, your courage, your virtue is the only possession that cannot be stolen, and it's the only one worth calling yours. Seneca said, "A good character, when established, is not easily overthrown, because it is not built on approval. It is not bent by storms. When everything external is lost, your character remains like a spine made of fire, upright, unwavering. So ask yourself, if it all disappeared tomorrow, would you still know who you are? That's the measure. That's the test. Not how much you own, but how much of yourself you refuse to sell. Not what you've collected, but what you've become. The wise man walks through ruins with nothing in his hands, and still nothing missing, because what matters most he carries inside. Always. Time is your most precious possession. Guard it. You can earn back money. You can rebuild trust. You can regain health. But time never returns. It is the only currency that depletes the moment it's spent, and yet it is the one we waste most recklessly. We give it to people who drain us. We surrender it to distractions that leave us hollow. We trade it for comfort, routine, noise, forgetting that every second is a step closer to the end. Seneca called it the greatest folly. How carefully we protect our property, yet leave the door wide open to thieves of time. A stranger asks for hours of your life, and you hand it over politely. Notifications steal your attention, and you let them. Entire days vanish into tasks you didn't choose, for people you don't admire, toward goals you don't believe in. Time is not a schedule, it's not a number on a screen. It is life itself. Each moment you guard is a breath reclaimed. Each no to what doesn't matter is a yes to what does. You don't have to fill every hour with ambition, but you must fill it with intention. Even rest can be sacred when chosen, not defaulted. You are not too busy. You are unfocused, and you are not running out of time. You are leaking it. Protect your hours like treasure, because that's what they are. Not someday, today. Right now, the clock is ticking, not to scare you, but to wake you. Spend your minutes like they're gold, because one day they'll be gone. Don't aim to be better than others, but better than your past self. Comparison is a silent thief. It sneaks in when you're tired, when you're scrolling, when you're unsure, and whispers that you're not enough, that they're winning, that you're behind. It turns your gaze outward, poisons your progress, and traps you in a game with no finish line, because no matter how much you achieve, someone will always seem to have more. The Stoics didn't play that game. They refused to measure themselves against others, because they knew the only meaningful race was internal. The only person worth competing with is the one you were yesterday. Your neighbor's success is not your failure. Their strength doesn't make you weak. Their path is not yours, and neither is their timing. To chase superiority is to chase a ghost. To chase self-improvement is to chase truth. Epictetus reminded us, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Not to impress others, not to outperform them, but to live better. Think clearer. Choose more wisely than you did the day before. That's it. That's the work. When your focus is on others, your effort is scattered. But when it's on your own growth, everything sharpens. You stop posturing. You start becoming. So ask yourself, not am I ahead, but am I improving? Not how do I compare, but what can I change? Let your past self be your only rival and your best proof of progress, because real success isn't being better than someone else. It's being so honest with yourself that you can no longer stay the same. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. There comes a moment, hundreds of times a day, where you stand at a crossroads between what is right and what is easy, what is true and what is convenient. These are not grand, cinematic moments. They are quiet. They pass in seconds, a chance to take credit you didn't earn, to say what someone wants to hear instead of what they need, to look the other way, to bend the line just slightly enough that no one notices, except you. Marcus Aurelius gave us a compass with brutal simplicity. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. No justifications, no mental gymnastics, no, but everyone else is doing it, just clarity. Because right and true are not suggestions for good times, they are demands for all times. The world will tempt you to blur the lines, to tell harmless lies, to cut corners in the name of ambition, comfort, or peacekeeping. But every compromise comes with a price, your self-respect. And piece by piece, those small betrayals chip away at your soul until you don't recognize yourself, but you remember what you lost. Doing what's right may cost you something, so will telling the truth, but not doing them will cost you more, your integrity, your freedom, your ability to sleep without shame. In a world that trades virtue for validation, choose the harder road. Do what is right. Speak what is true, even if no one notices, especially if no one notices. That's when it matters most. A slave who is virtuous is freer than a king who is not. Freedom is not found in titles or thrones. It's not granted by power, money, or the ability to command others. You can sit on a golden seat, draped in wealth, feared by nations, and still be shackled by desire, by fear, by ego, by the need to be obeyed, adored, remembered. That's not freedom, that's a cage built from luxury. The Stoics turned the world upside down with this truth. A man in chains, beaten, stripped of his rights, if he governs his mind, his choices, his virtue, is freer than a king who governs nothing within himself. Epictetus lived this. He was a slave. His body could be controlled, ordered, even broken. But his soul, never. He chose his thoughts, his integrity, his peace. No master could take that. Because true freedom begins the moment you stop being ruled by anything external. Contrast that with the tyrant, rich, feared, praised, and constantly at war inside, addicted to approval, panicked by betrayal, hungry for more, yet never full. That man is not a king. He's a prisoner wearing a crown. Freedom is the ability to choose what's right, even when the cost is high, to resist impulse, to endure hardship, to stand alone with clarity. That kind of freedom is rare, quiet, invisible, but it is absolute. And it means that no matter your status, no matter how the world defines you, if you live with virtue, you are untouchable. Because the highest form of freedom is not being able to do whatever you want. It's being able to want only what makes you whole. A philosopher's life is their most convincing argument. Words can deceive, speeches can charm, books can impress. But the real test of wisdom is not what you say. It's how you live. In the end, your life is your philosophy, whether you claim the title or not. Your actions, when no one's watching, are your doctrine. Your habits, your reactions, your sacrifices, your boundaries, they are your loudest, most unforgiving truths. The Stoics knew that rhetoric means nothing if your life contradicts it. A man can preach virtue while living in vice. He can quote Epictetus in the morning and gossip by noon. He can teach temperance while serving his ego at every opportunity. But when crisis hits, when pain, loss, or betrayal comes knocking, words vanish. What remains is how he responds. And in that moment, everyone will see who he really is. A philosopher's life is their most convincing argument because it is the one that cannot be faked under pressure. It shows whether discipline is real or rehearsed, whether values are lived or performed, whether wisdom is internal or merely worn like a costume. You don't have to teach philosophy to embody it. You teach it by how you treat the rude cashier, by how you handle failure, by how you speak of people when they're not in the room. That's your lecture. That's your legacy. The Stoic doesn't aim to win debates. They aim to win themselves. So don't ask, what do I believe? Ask instead, what does my life say I believe? Because that is the only argument the world will remember. Bear and forbear, endure and abstain. There is a kind of strength that doesn't roar. It doesn't win medals. It doesn't get praised. It simply survives, quietly, steadily, without breaking. This is the essence of bear and forbear. Endure what must be endured. Abstain from what must be resisted. Hold your ground in the storm. Hold your fire when your impulses scream to be fed. The Stoics made this their battle cry. Not with grandeur, but with grit. Bear what is painful, the loss, the injustice, the failure, the loneliness. Do not collapse. Do not complain. Stand, and then forbear. Hold back the anger, the indulgence, the easy revenge. Deny what poisons, even when it tastes sweet. This is not suppression, it's sovereignty. Seneca wrote, "Endure and abstain. These two are the twin tasks of virtue. One is the muscle to carry pain. The other is the discipline to say no to temptation, to comfort, to the pleasure that hollows you out after. To bear is to keep moving when it's hard. To forbear is to hold still when it would feel so good to lash out. Together, they create an inner fortress, a soul that does not shatter, even when the world does. You want resilience? You want wisdom? You want peace? Learn to bear what hurts without flinching. Learn to forbear what lures without giving in. Because life will always test you through suffering, through seduction, and your power lies not in how loudly you fight back, but in how firmly you refuse to be moved. To be angry is to punish yourself for another's mistake. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Someone lies to you. Someone disrespects, ignores, insults, and suddenly your body burns, your chest tightens, your thoughts sharpen into weapons. You carry it home. You replay it in your mind. You tell someone else, hoping for validation. You lose hours, sometimes days, feeling poisoned by someone else's behavior. But here's the truth the Stoics held with chilling clarity. You are suffering for what someone else did. That's the madness of anger. It feels like power, but it's self-inflicted harm. You drink the poison and hope it punishes them. You burn your peace to light their shadow. You hand over your emotional reins to the very person who wronged you and call it justice. The Stoics saw anger as a failure, not of morality, but of control. You cannot stop people from being ignorant, rude, selfish, or cruel, but you can stop yourself from becoming collateral damage. The moment you choose anger, you choose to let them live inside you, rent-free, shaping your mood, stealing your time, warping your clarity. This doesn't mean you tolerate injustice. It means you respond, not react. You protect your peace even when others throw stones. You recognize that their mistake is theirs to carry, not yours to cradle. To be angry is to hand your power to the person who least deserves it. But to remain composed, to rise above, to let go, that's not weakness. That's self-respect. That's freedom. That's the beginning of becoming untouchable. The good life is found in aligning will with reason. There is a war that rages quietly inside every person, the pull of impulse against the guidance of reason. One screams, now. The other whispers, wait. One seeks comfort, applause, indulgence. The other seeks clarity, integrity, truth. And until they are brought into harmony, peace will always feel out of reach. The Stoics believe the good life isn't about avoiding pain or chasing pleasure. It's about bringing your will under the direction of reason, not killing emotion but mastering it, not ignoring desire but questioning it, living not by what you feel in the moment, but by what you know in your soul to be right. When your will aligns with reason, you stop living reactively. You don't speak just to be heard. You don't act just to be liked. You don't fall into temptation and call it fate. You choose deliberately, calmly, powerfully, even if it costs you, especially when it costs you. Marcus Aurelius ruled over millions, yet fought daily to keep his soul in sync with reason. If it's endurable, then endure it. If not, then stop complaining. Your judgment makes it so. These were not words for others. They were reminders to himself. This is the root of freedom. This is the foundation of peace. When the heart and mind no longer argue, when passion and principle stand side by side, you begin to move through life with clarity, not tossed by every feeling, but guided by something deeper. Not everything that feels good is good, but everything that's right, when chosen freely, will lead you home. The wise man does not grieve for what he never truly owned. We mourn so many things in this life, not just the people we lose, but the jobs, the love, the status, the dreams we thought were guaranteed. We grieve when things slip through our fingers, forgetting they were never ours to hold in the first place. The Stoics remind us of a hard truth wrapped in quiet mercy. You cannot lose what was never truly yours. Your partner, a gift, not a possession. Your wealth, borrowed by fate, not earned in permanence. Your body, your youth, your time, all on loan, temporary, fragile. The illusion of ownership is what makes loss feel like theft. But the wise man knows nothing belongs to him but his mind, his choices, his character. All else is passing, like wind through open hands. This doesn't mean you don't feel pain. It means you stop resisting reality. It means you stop chaining your identity to things that can vanish overnight. It means you walk with gratitude, not grip. You love deeply, but without entitlement. You build, you serve, you enjoy, but you release. When something leaves, whether by fate, by failure, or by force, the wise man bows his head, not in defeat, but in understanding. He does not wail over the loss, but honors what was. He doesn't clutch ashes. He breathes, and he moves forward unbroken. Because grief tied to illusion is endless, but grief grounded in wisdom, that grief heals. You were never meant to own, only to experience. And when you live this way, loss stops being ruin. It becomes reverence. Everything ephemeral is unimportant. The world dazzles you with what disappears. Beauty, applause, wealth, status, they glow for a moment and then dissolve like mist. And yet we spend our lives chasing them, sacrificing sleep, peace, integrity, all for things that do not last. The Stoics saw the madness in this. They knew what dies with time was never truly yours. What fades cannot fulfill you. Everything ephemeral, every like, every trend, every win that demands the next is a trap. It keeps you running toward vanishing points. You finally get what you want, and it's gone before you can hold it. You realize too late that you traded your soul for a shadow. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the known world, reminded himself daily, all is ephemeral, fame and the famous as well. He had seen palaces crumble, statues fall, great names forgotten in less than a century. And still, he urged himself to value what endures. So ask yourself, what will matter in a year, in a decade, on your deathbed? That moment of revenge, that fleeting praise, that passing luxury? Will any of it be worth what you paid? What's real is what survives time. Courage, honesty, kindness, wisdom. These cannot be taken, bought, or aged. They live beyond the moment. They make you whole when everything else slips away. To chase what fades is to tie your happiness to a flame. To chase what lasts is to walk through fire without fear. Because once you stop needing what dies, you begin to live for what can never be taken. Events unfold as they must, not as we wish. You can plan every hour. You can dream with clarity, build with precision, love with your whole heart, and still, The world will do what it will. The phone call will come. The offer will fall through. The person you trusted will walk away. And in that moment, your expectations will shatter against the cold stone of reality. The Stoics didn't curse this. They embraced it. Because to demand the world obey your desires is to live in constant war with what is. You don't suffer because life unfolds the wrong way. You suffer because you believed it should have gone another way. But the universe doesn't consult your hopes. It follows its own rhythm, indifferent to fairness or preference. When you expect events to bend to your will, every twist becomes a betrayal. But when you accept that events unfold as they must, as part of something greater, unknowable, uncontrollable, you make peace with what would otherwise break you. This isn't surrender. It's strategy. It's choosing flexibility over fury. It's meeting disappointment, not with bitterness, but with grace. It's saying, this is not what I wanted, but it is what is. And so I will respond, not resist. You cannot change the tide, but you can master your sail. You cannot choose the storm, but you can choose the captain you become in it. And when you learn to expect nothing, but to accept everything, you become unshakable, not because life finally obeys you, but because you've stopped needing it to. Philosophy is preparation for death. We spend our lives pretending death is distant. We fill our days with noise, distraction, consumption, anything to forget the truth waiting at the edge of every breath. This ends, and that terrifies us, so we avoid it, we deny it. We build our lives as if forever we're promised, but the Stoics walked straight into the shadow and said, let it teach you. Philosophy, to them, wasn't a theory. It was training for the final moment. It was not about debating metaphysics or memorizing maxims. It was about learning how to die well by learning how to live well. Every principle, every practice, every virtue sharpened the soul for one thing, the day nothing else could be controlled. Seneca wrote, he who has learned to die has unlearned how to be a slave, because what can the world threaten when you've already made peace with the ultimate truth? When you no longer fear death, no one can own you. Not failure, not loss, not pain. You become untouchable. To prepare for death is not to be morbid. It is to wake up. When you remember you're mortal, your pettiness dissolves, your grudges fade, your urgency ignites. You stop living like you have time. You stop postponing your peace. You stop wasting your one and only life on things that mean nothing when the clock runs out. The end is always near, closer than we like to think. But to the prepared, it is not a thief. It is a mirror, and it shows you what truly matters before it's too late. The body is a servant of the soul, not its master. Your flesh will scream. It will beg for ease, for pleasure, for comfort. It will pull you toward laziness, indulgence, fear. It will say, rest, retreat, avoid pain, seek warmth, seek approval, seek escape. But the Stoics knew a deeper truth. The body is not your ruler. It is your servant. And the moment you reverse that order, when your soul starts obeying the impulses of your flesh, you begin to rot from within. The body feels, but it does not know. It hungers, but it does not choose. It craves safety, even if it costs you your integrity. It fears discomfort, even if it means betraying your purpose. But the soul, that spark of reason and will within you, it was built to command. It was made to lead. To let the body govern is to live like an animal, reactive, shallow, enslaved to sensation. But to use the body as a vessel, strong, disciplined, aligned to higher purpose, is to become fully human, to wake early when you'd rather sleep, to speak truth when your chest tightens with fear, to endure pain because virtue demands it. Your body may ache, it may tremble, it may even break, but your soul, if trained, if placed in command, endures, because it doesn't rely on muscles or beauty or perfect conditions. It relies on choice. The Stoic does not hate the body, but neither do they worship it. They respect it as a tool, nothing more. You are not your urges. You are not your fatigue. You are what commands them. And if you forget that, you will be ruled by what was meant to serve. He who needs nothing possesses everything. Need is the root of suffering. The more you believe you must have something to be whole, a person, a title, a future, an apology, the more power you hand to the world to break you. Every desire becomes a chain. Every craving becomes a blade pointed inward. The Stoics saw this clearly. The less you need, the more unshakable you become. He who needs nothing fears nothing. He cannot be bribed with comfort, manipulated by praise, or shattered by loss. He is free, not because he owns the world, but because he's stopped letting it own him. This isn't emptiness, it's not coldness, it's liberation, because when your peace no longer depends on outcomes, when your identity no longer hinges on recognition, when your happiness no longer demands permission, you walk through life unburdened. You're no longer hungry for more. You are full. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." The Stoic doesn't reject possessions or pleasure. They simply refuse to be enslaved by them. They enjoy what is there, they release what is gone, and in doing so, they possess the rarest wealth of all, sufficiency. To need nothing is not to have nothing. It's to own yourself so completely that nothing else can define you, because the man who stands empty of need stands full of power, and the one who is content with what is has already won everything the world is still chasing. Do not argue with fools, lest you become one. There's a strange temptation to prove yourself right, to engage, to correct, to defend your honor in the face of ignorance. But not all battles are worth fighting. Some are traps disguised as debates, and when you argue with a fool, you do more than waste your time. You risk becoming one. The Stoics warned us, the moment you descend into irrationality to combat irrationality, you have already lost. You let emotion override reason. You trade clarity for noise. You mirror the very chaos you meant to confront. And suddenly, you are no longer standing above it. You're in it, covered in the same mud, indistinguishable from the person who dragged you there. Fools don't seek truth. They seek reaction. They feed on attention, not understanding. When you argue with them, you validate their stage. You join their performance. You hand them your peace. And for what? To feel momentarily superior? To win a point that means nothing? The wise walk away, not out of weakness but out of power, because dignity is never found in shouting matches. Reason doesn't need to raise its voice, and wisdom doesn't beg to be heard. This is restraint. This is self-mastery. It's knowing that your energy is sacred, that not every opinion needs correcting, that not every provocation deserves a response. So let the fool rant, let them mock, let them misunderstand. And you stay still, you stay sharp, because the moment you argue to feed your ego, you've left the path of reason and joined the circus you swore you were above. Fear arises when we want what we cannot control. Fear doesn't come from the unknown. It comes from the uncontrollable, from gripping something tightly, your future, your health, their love, your reputation, and realizing deep down that it can slip through your hands at any moment, that you can do everything right and still lose, that no amount of effort can guarantee what you crave. That is where fear is born. The Stoics knew this fear well, and they dismantled it, not by avoiding it, but by exposing its root. Fear is the child of attachment. We fear what we think we need. We fear losing what we believe we own. But the truth, you own nothing beyond your choices. Everything else, your body, your status, your loved ones, is on loan from the world. Epictetus said it with surgical clarity. You are disturbed not by things, but by your opinion about things. And often, that opinion is this: I cannot live without it. But you can. When you begin to want only what is within your control, your thoughts, your values, your actions, fear starts to evaporate. You stop clinging. You stop bracing. You stop living in constant dread of loss or rejection or fate's next blow. You become rooted, even when the ground shakes. This isn't apathy, it's power. It's not detachment from life, but a deeper engagement with what truly matters. Because once you stop needing the wind to blow your way, you stop fearing the storm. And in that stillness, fear no longer commands you, you command yourself. Practice voluntary discomfort to build resilience. Most people pray for ease, for soft mornings and painless days, but ease is a liar. It whispers comfort while stealing your edge. It convinces you that fragility is safety, that avoidance is peace, and then, when life inevitably strikes, it shatters you. The Stoics understood something brutal and true. You must train for hardship before it arrives. You must walk barefoot before the path demands it. You must go hungry, sleep on the floor, wear plain clothes, deny yourself luxuries, not because it's heroic, but because it's necessary. Voluntary discomfort is not punishment. It is preparation. It is your soul in the gym. Because life doesn't ask if you're ready before it takes what you love. It doesn't ask if you've rehearsed suffering before it sends it. But if you've already tasted it, on your own terms, in your own way, it loses its ability to paralyze you. When you choose discomfort, you're not courting misery. You're building armor. You're learning that you can endure hunger without losing yourself, that you can face silence without crumbling, that you can live with less and still feel whole. You are stripping life down to its bones and discovering you survive. Resilience isn't born in crisis. It's revealed there, but it's built long before, in those quiet, unseen moments where you willingly step into the hard thing. Comfort never made anyone strong, and resilience is never an accident. Choose the harder path. Make friends with discomfort. Not because you enjoy it, but because you are stronger than what you fear, and one day you'll prove it. Your mind can be a fortress or a prison. It's your choice. You wake up each day inside a world no one else can see, your own mind. And whether that world strengthens you or suffocates you isn't written in your DNA or decided by your past. It's shaped moment by moment by the thoughts you allow to take root, by the beliefs you repeat, and by the stories you tell yourself about what you can endure. The Stoics understood that your mind is your final territory. You may lose your home, your health, your freedom, but if your mind remains your own, you are never conquered. It can be your fortress, solid, guarded by reason, protected by discipline, a place where peace lives not in denial, but in control. But the same mind, left untrained, can become a prison, one where fear loops endlessly, where doubt eats away at your courage, where old wounds replay until they become identity. And here's the truth most never face. The guard locking the door is you. The keys have always been in your hands. Marcus Aurelius, who lived under the weight of an empire, said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It wasn't theory, it was survival. So ask yourself, do your thoughts free you or chain you? Do they build walls or break them? Because in the end, your circumstances may shape the scenery, but your mind, it decides whether you walk through life as a prisoner or as a sovereign, and that choice is made not once, but every day. To live rightly is to live now. We say someday, as if it were a promise. We push our dreams, our healing, our honesty, our love into the foggy future where we assume time will wait for us. I'll start when I'm ready. I'll change when life calms down. I'll speak the truth when it's safer. But the Stoics knew this was the great deception, that we have time, that tomorrow is guaranteed. The only moment you ever own is this one, right now, this breath, this decision, this fleeting second of consciousness you've been gifted, not owed, and to waste it waiting is to commit a slow, silent kind of death. To live rightly is not about flawless morality or dramatic virtue. It's about presence. It's about choosing not to delay what matters, to forgive now, not later, to speak now, not next week, to sit in stillness, to walk with intention, to act as if this hour is your last, not with panic, but with precision. Procrastination isn't laziness, it's fear, and fear thrives in a life divorced from the present. Right living doesn't begin in grand resolutions. It begins when you look life in the eye and say, I'm here, no more escaping into regrets or fantasies, no more waiting for better timing. There is no later. There is no perfect alignment of stars. There is now. And every time you step into it, fully, courageously, honestly, you reclaim your life from the illusions that keep most people sleepwalking to their grave. Don't die before you die. There's a kind of death that happens long before the body stops breathing. It creeps in quietly. The day you stop trying, the day you stop feeling, the day you stop showing up. It's when fear overrules desire, when routine smothers wonder, when you begin living not with urgency, but with resignation. That is the first death, and too many live in it for years. The Stoics saw this tragedy clearly. A life unlived is a life already lost. You were not born to simply avoid risk, manage comfort, and wait for the end. You were born to act, to feel, to fail and rise again. The clock is already ticking, so why waste another second pretending you have time? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." These words weren't meant to be poetic. They were a warning. The true enemy isn't death, it's delay. It's the way we postpone our potential, trading passion for safety, silence for truth, presence for distraction. Every moment you ignore your calling, you die a little. Every time you silence your instincts, avoid the hard conversation, numb instead of feel, you let your soul decay in the name of comfort. But you can choose differently. Right now, don't let your body carry a soul that's already gone. Don't sit in the waiting room of your own existence. Live fully, imperfectly, urgently, because death will come once. But the tragedy is letting it visit before it has to. Adversity introduces you to yourself. When life is easy, it's tempting to believe you are strong, that you're calm, wise, disciplined, but comfort is a mirror that flatters. It shows only what you want to see. True reflection comes when the ground crumbles beneath you, when nothing goes your way, when you are stripped of your plans, your pride, your illusions. That's when adversity knocks, and suddenly you meet yourself. The Stoics didn't pray for ease. They welcomed trials like a blacksmith welcomes fire, not because it feels good, but because it reveals what's real. Adversity has no patience for your masks. It doesn't care about your image. It rips off everything artificial and asks, what's left? Will you lash out or listen? Will you break or bend? Will you fall into bitterness or rise into resolve? When your strength is tested, you find out whether it was a costume or your core. When the storm comes, and it will, you discover if you were ever anchored or just floating, hoping the winds would stay kind. Most people don't know themselves. They know the version that's never been truly pressed. But pressure introduces the deeper you, the one that doesn't flinch, the one that doesn't flee, the one forged by pain, but not owned by it. This is the brutal gift of adversity. It strips you down to your essence, and from that place, you rebuild. Not weaker, not smaller, but true. No mask, no pretense, just you, finally, unmistakably you. Don't seek to know what happens next. Seek to meet it well. The mind craves certainty. It grasps at the future like a drowning man reaches for air, panicked, desperate, aching to know. What will happen? Will I succeed? Will they stay? Will I be safe? And in chasing answers we'll never fully get, we poison the present with anxiety and exhaust ourselves with shadows. But the Stoics taught a radical alternative. Stop needing to know. Start preparing to respond. Because life is not a script you get to read ahead of time. It is a series of unknowns, moments unfolding without your permission. Control is an illusion, But readiness, that's real. You may not know what's coming, but you can choose how you'll meet it. Epictetus reminded us, it is not events that disturb us, but our opinion about them. And our opinion is often this: I should have known, I should have predicted, I should have prevented. But you don't need prophecy. You need presence. You need strength. You need character that holds, no matter what tomorrow brings. You can't outthink fate. You can't plan your way around suffering, but you can train your soul to remain calm, honest, courageous, whether the next moment brings triumph or loss. This is your power, not to control the future, but to meet it standing tall. So let the need to know go. Replace it with the need to be ready, because fortune may be blind, but you can walk into the unknown with your eyes wide open and your heart unshaken. Every situation is an opportunity to practice virtue. There is no such thing as a neutral moment. Every second, every encounter, every obstacle that crosses your path is not random. It is a test, a quiet, constant invitation to become who you say you want to be. You don't need a perfect environment to grow. You need awareness, because the moment you wake up to it, you realize, this is it. This is the training ground. This is the arena. The Stoics didn't wait for ideal conditions to live rightly. They knew the messy, imperfect, inconvenient moments were the exact ones where virtue meant something. You lost your temper? That was your chance to choose patience. Someone insulted you? There was your test for humility. You faced delay, rejection, pain? That was your moment to practice endurance. It's easy to be kind when you're rested. Easy to be honest when there's no risk. Easy to be calm when things go your way. But what matters is who you are when they don't. Virtue is not passive. It's active. It must be exercised or it atrophies. Every moment gives you a choice. Escalate or de-escalate. Give in or rise up. React or respond. And the beauty is, you're never without a chance to grow. You don't need more time, more success, more peace. You need now. There is no wasted moment when you see life as practice, because even in pain, boredom, or disappointment, virtue is waiting, not out there, in you, ready to be chosen, or not, but always within reach. What you flee from follows you until you face it. We all run from pain, from shame, from memories that burn when they surface. We bury them in silence, drown them in distractions, numb them with noise. We change jobs, cities, partners, hoping distance will erase the ache. But it doesn't, because what you refuse to face doesn't disappear. It waits. It hides in your habits, your fears, your triggers, and it follows you like a shadow you can't outrun. The Stoics knew this truth intimately. Avoidance is not peace. It's a prison with soft walls. Whatever you won't look at gains power over you. The longer you flee, the deeper its roots grow. Fear is not made smaller by turning away. It's fed. It thrives in your silence. It learns your weakness. And one day it breaks through in ways you can't predict. Anger, paralysis, despair. Seneca wrote, "He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." But it's not just about suffering. It's about refusal. The refusal to face what hurts keeps you stuck in a loop, reliving the same story under different names. But when you turn and face it, truly face it, you rob it of its grip. You stop being prey. You step into the pain with open eyes and a steady heart, and you say, "I see you, and you do not own me." Only then does healing begin. Only then does fear become fuel, and scars become proof that you fought your way forward. Face it, because freedom never chases you. You have to walk through the fire to earn it. Let reason preside, emotion advise, never rule. Emotion surges like a tide, hot, wild, and immediate. It tells you to yell, to run, to withdraw, to strike. It promises justice, relief, power. But the Stoics warned, emotion is not meant to lead. It's meant to be heard and then guided by reason. Letting emotion rule is like handing the steering wheel to a storm and hoping you reach shore. Anger, fear, envy, lust, they rise like flames, begging for control. And in the heat of them, reason feels like a whisper in a riot. But it is that whisper you must cling to, not because emotion is the enemy, but because emotion is temporary. It feels like truth, but it's a signal, a flare, a plea to be noticed but not obeyed without scrutiny. Reason is the sovereign within you. It does not silence emotion, it interprets it. When sadness arises, reason asks, why? When rage builds, reason questions, is this useful? Is this just? This is not suppression, it is hierarchy. Emotion gets a voice, not a vote. The wise man does not numb, he listens, but he lets virtue decide, he lets clarity speak last. Because words spoken in fury, actions taken in fear, these are seeds of regret. They feel righteous now, but rot later. To let reason preside is not to live coldly, it is to live masterfully. You become your own governor. You walk through chaos without being ruled by it. Let emotion knock on the door. Let reason open it. But never, never let emotion hold the key. Luxury weakens the soul. Luxury seduces gently. It wraps itself in softness, in ease, in elegance. It tells you you've earned this, you deserve this, that comfort is the goal and indulgence is the reward. And so you begin to soften, first in your body, then in your habits, and eventually in your spirit. Not all at once, but slowly, quietly, as the soul forgets how to do hard things. The Stoics saw luxury not as a gift, but a test, a hidden danger wrapped in beauty. Because comfort, when unchecked, breeds dependence. You begin to need what once was a bonus. You become irritable without convenience, weak without indulgence. You stop enduring and start expecting. And that's when the soul begins to rot, not from pain, but from pleasure. Seneca, a man surrounded by wealth, warned fiercely, luxury creeps upon us gradually and soon destroys us completely. He knew firsthand how luxury, if not mastered, masters you. It dulls your resilience. It trains you to flinch at discomfort, to retreat from discipline, to seek shortcuts instead of strength. This isn't about rejecting all comfort. It's about refusing to be defined by it, about using it without needing it, about remembering that ease is not the path to greatness. Struggle is. Hardship sharpens. Simplicity fortifies. Voluntary discomfort renews your edge, because the soul was not made to rest in velvet. It was made to stand in fire. Enjoy luxury when it comes, but never let it own you, because when comfort becomes a cage, freedom becomes a stranger. Resentment is choosing to live in a wound. They hurt you. They betrayed, ignored, embarrassed, humiliated, or abandoned you, and you were right to feel it, to bleed, to burn, to grieve. But what you do after that pain defines everything, because resentment is not the wound, it's the decision to stay in it, to build a home inside the hurt, to replay it, nurture it, keep it fresh so the scar never forms. The Stoics saw resentment as a form of self-imprisonment. You chain yourself to the past. You give power to the person who wronged you, again and again, long after they've left or forgotten. You become loyal to your anger and disloyal to your peace. It feels like control, but it's decay. You rehearse conversations that will never happen. You imagine justice that will never come. You think holding on keeps you strong, when really, it keeps you stuck. The world moves forward. You remain behind, shackled not by what happened, but by your unwillingness to let go. Forgiveness isn't saying what happened was okay. It's saying you're no longer willing to suffer for it. It's turning your face toward freedom. Resentment doesn't protect you. It poisons you, slowly, quietly, completely. To release it is an act of radical courage. You walk out of the burning house, even if the fire feels familiar. You choose to heal, even when revenge whispers seductively. You say, I will not build my life around what broke me, because living in a wound may feel justified, but it will never feel whole. The past and future are shadows. The present is all you own. We drift through life haunted by two illusions, yesterday and tomorrow. We replay old wounds, regrets, lost chances, things we should have said. We reach for the future like it's salvation, pinning hope on someday, waiting for when we're ready, when it's perfect, when it finally makes sense. But both are shadows, untouchable, unchangeable, and in chasing or clinging to them, we abandon the only moment that ever was or will be real, now. The Stoics anchored their lives in the present, not because it was easy, but because it was true. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment." This was not poetry, it was a command to wake up. The past cannot be fixed, the future cannot be promised, and yet we waste years in those rooms, never realizing the door was never locked. We just refuse to step through it. Right now is the only moment you have power. Right now is where strength is built, forgiveness is chosen, purpose is claimed. Everything else is a mirage, a memory, a maybe. The present is not a hallway to rush through. It is the only home your life will ever truly know. So stop waiting, stop rewinding. The past cannot hold you unless you hold it. The future cannot save you unless you build it. Right here, in this breath, this choice, this second. This is all you own. Spend it like it matters. Because it does, think as a philosopher, act as a citizen. It's easy to sit alone with high ideals, to contemplate justice in theory, to imagine courage, virtue, wisdom in quiet solitude. The mind soars when undisturbed. But the Stoics knew that philosophy means nothing if it stays locked inside your skull. The world is not a retreat, it's a crucible, and your task is not just to think clearly, but to live rightly among others. Think as a philosopher, act as a citizen. This was their creed. You must refine your principles in private, but prove them in public. That means bringing patience into traffic, bringing honesty into your workplace, bringing self-restraint into argument, bringing compassion into systems that reward cruelty. Philosophy without action is performance. Citizenship without thought is chaos. But together, they become power. The philosopher seeks truth. The citizen lives among chaos. You are both. You don't get to escape responsibility in the name of introspection, and you don't get to excuse poor choices with the noise of the world. Wisdom demands both the inner gaze and the outer contribution. You are not an island. You are part of a city, a family, a moment in history. Your choices ripple. So be the stillness in the storm. Be the logic in the shouting room. Be the one who knows the good and does it, especially when it's inconvenient. Do not withdraw. Do not surrender. Contemplate on the mountain, but descend and walk in the mud. That's where your philosophy either dies or becomes real. No one can rob you of your moral purpose. They can take your money. They can strip you of your title. They can ruin your name, burn your home, betray your trust. But there is one thing no power, no person, no misfortune can ever touch: your ability to choose what is right. That is your moral purpose, your compass, your flame, and it belongs to you alone. The Stoics built their entire philosophy around this single, unshakable truth. You are not what happens to you. You are what you do in response. Even when everything else is stolen, your character remains in your control. The world can press against your skin, but it cannot invade your will, not without your permission. Epictetus was a slave, beaten, owned, stripped of freedom, yet he declared with clarity, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus can master my will." That is not delusion. That is defiance at its highest level. That is strength born from a place no hand can reach. Your moral purpose is your last line of defense and your first act of power. It is the decision to act with courage when afraid, to speak with truth when it's costly, to show compassion when you've been wounded. It's the quiet refusal to become what has hurt you. You may be surrounded by injustice, insulted by cruelty, abandoned in darkness, but if you hold your purpose close, you have not been defeated, because no one can rob you of what you refuse to give away. And your soul, when guarded by principle, is the one thing in this life that can never be taken. The greater your self-control, the freer you become. We're taught to think freedom means doing whatever we want, eating what we crave, saying what we feel, chasing every impulse the moment it sparks. But that's not freedom. That's enslavement disguised as liberty. Because every time you obey a craving without question, every time you let emotion drive the wheel, every time you surrender to the moment instead of commanding it, you tighten your own chains. The Stoics saw this clearly. Freedom is not the absence of restraint, it's the mastery of it. It's the ability to say no to what would weaken you, to pause when your anger begs you to explode, to walk away from comfort when your higher self demands growth, to choose silence over gossip, discipline over indulgence, reason over reaction. Self-control is not repression, it's power. It's the quiet authority to govern your own mind, your own time, your own energy. The one who cannot say no to themselves is not free. They are ruled by hunger, mood, habit. They are a puppet pulled by unseen strings, convinced they're choosing, when in truth they're obeying. But when you can delay gratification, when you can carry your own weight without complaint, when you can feel desire and not act on it, you unlock something rare and untouchable. You no longer live at the mercy of your environment. You stop being controlled by the world and start becoming sovereign within it. That is freedom, not in doing more, but in needing less, not in being wild, but in being whole. Make use of what is in your power, accept what is not. You don't control the weather. You don't control the economy. You don't control the thoughts of others, the randomness of illness, the suddenness of loss, but you do control your response, your choices, your discipline, your perspective, and that small, sacred territory, your inner world, is where your power begins and ends. The Stoics drew a clear line through life. On one side, the things that are within your control. On the other, everything that is not. And suffering, they taught, comes not from the world itself, but from crossing that line, from trying to grip what was never yours to hold. We burn ourselves out trying to change people who don't want to change. We lose sleep trying to predict futures we cannot see. We rage at delays, losses, betrayals, as if our anger will rewrite the past. But no amount of effort can change what lies beyond your command. And to waste your strength, there is to drain the energy you need for where it can make a difference. Make use of what is in your power, your habits, your attention, your voice, your integrity. Master these, sharpen them, own them completely, because in those things you are a god. But the rest, the outcome, the reaction, the luck, release it. Acceptance is not weakness, it is clarity. It is saying, I will not drown fighting the current. I will swim where I can. That's not giving up, that's waking up. And it's the first step toward unshakable peace. The world owes you nothing, not even justice. We're raised with a dangerous illusion that life is fair, that virtue guarantees reward, that suffering has meaning if we're good enough. But the Stoics shattered that comfort early. The world is not your parent. It does not owe you fairness, closure, kindness, or even justice. It moves by laws far older than your sense of entitlement, and it listens to no one's complaints. This truth is harsh, but it's freeing, because when you stop expecting life to be fair, you stop being crushed every time it isn't. You stop asking, why me? When hardship hits, you stop waiting for the apology that never comes, for the broken system to suddenly become just, for the reward you think your suffering earned. The world doesn't operate on merit. It operates on nature. Storms do not pause for the innocent. Illness does not avoid the kind. Evil is not always punished, and virtue is not always praised. So what then? You choose to be just anyway. You choose to do good not because the world pays you back, but because you are that kind of person. You act with principle in a world that may never reward it, not out of naivety, but out of discipline, out of dignity. Because to live well when life is unfair, that is power. You were never promised justice, but you can still embody it. And that choice, that is what makes you untouchable in a world that owes you nothing. Being misunderstood is not a misfortune if your conscience is clear. There will be days when your silence is mistaken for weakness, your kindness for manipulation, your strength for pride. People will twist your words, question your motives, fill in the gaps of what they don't understand with their own projections. And it will hurt because we all want to be seen rightly. But the Stoics teach us something deeper. Being misunderstood is not a tragedy unless you let it be. The only thing that matters is your alignment with truth. If your conscience is clear, if you acted with integrity, if your motives were rooted in virtue, then the world's opinion becomes background noise. To chase approval from those who refuse to see you clearly is to chain your peace to their confusion. You do not owe the world your reputation. You owe it your character. Let them think what they will. You don't answer to gossip. You don't have to clarify your soul to everyone who misreads your face. Defending yourself against every false impression is a battle with no finish line. It drains your spirit and distracts you from your purpose. Hold your ground. Speak truth when needed, but don't beg to be understood. Some will never hear you. Some refuse to. That is their prison, not yours. And when you lie in bed at night, it won't be their opinions that matter. It will be your conscience. If it's clean, you rest in freedom, because being seen wrongly is bearable. But betraying yourself for acceptance, that's the real misfortune. Change is nature's law. Resisting it causes suffering. Everything you know is in motion. The seasons shift, your body ages, relationships evolve, cities rise and crumble, and your mind, your very identity, is reshaped day by day. This isn't a flaw. It's not a glitch in the system. It is the system. Change is not the exception to life. It is life. And yet, we resist it. We cling to the way things were. We mourn what used to be, even when it was imperfect. We fear what's next, even when it offers growth. We grasp at permanence, like a drowning man clutches at air, desperate, blind, refusing to let go. But the Stoics warned, what you resist will own you, not because it has power, but because your refusal gives it power. Change doesn't hurt. It's your attachment to what's slipping away that does. You can scream at the tide, or you can sail with it. You can mourn the leaves as they fall, or you can marvel that they ever grew. You can fear the unknown, or you can meet it like an old friend, uncomfortable, unpredictable, but necessary. There is no freedom in holding still. There is only decay. The tree that won't bend breaks. The heart that won't open hardens. The mind that won't evolve becomes its own prison. To suffer less, surrender more, not in defeat, but in wisdom. Let go of what no longer serves. Adapt with grace. Trust the rhythm of a universe that never promised control, only motion, because change is not your enemy. It's your becoming. Seek harmony, not control. Control is seductive. It whispers lies of safety, of certainty, of peace bought through domination. You think if you can just get everything in order, your schedule, your relationships, your future, then you'll finally breathe. But the more you grip, the more things slip. People resist. Life changes. Plans unravel. And suddenly you realize control is not peace. It's panic dressed in precision. The Stoics never sought to rule the world. They sought to align with it. Harmony, not control. That means understanding what is yours to influence and what is not. It means moving with the current of life, not fighting it at every turn. It means listening instead of forcing, adapting instead of resisting, responding instead of reacting. To seek harmony is to live like a musician, not a tyrant. You don't silence the instruments. You learn to listen to them. You don't demand perfection. You seek rhythm. You don't command the world, you join it, fully present, grounded, and responsive. This isn't passivity, it's wisdom. It's knowing that a rigid tree snaps in a storm, but the flexible one bends and survives. That a heart at peace isn't one that conquers everything, it's one that flows with what is. You will never control how others act, how time unfolds, how fate deals its hand, but you can control your presence, your tone, your patience, your grace, and in doing so, you stop being the clenched fist and become the open hand, not weak, not passive, just in tune and unshakably strong. The Stoic does not suppress emotion, but aligns it with reason. There's a common lie about Stoicism, that to be Stoic is to be emotionless, cold, robotic, detached, but nothing could be further from the truth. The Stoic feels deeply, pain, joy, love, fear, even sorrow. The difference is that a Stoic does not serve emotion. He listens to it, honors it, but does not let it dictate his soul. Emotion is not the enemy. Unexamined emotion is raw, reactive, untamed. It can lead you into ruin, saying what can't be unsaid, doing what can't be undone. But when emotion is brought before the throne of reason, it transforms. It becomes fuel for courage, not rage, a call to action, not panic. It is felt, but not followed blindly. The Stoic doesn't kill feeling, he disciplines it. When grief strikes, he allows the ache, but doesn't drown in it. When anger flares, he notes the fire, but does not throw it. When joy rises, he embraces it, but without needing to clutch or cling. He lets emotion inform him, not rule him. This is not suppression. Suppression is fear. Suppression is shame. Stoicism is neither. It is the radical act of standing in the flood of human feeling and saying, I will not be swept away. To align emotion with reason is to make peace within, to feel deeply and still choose rightly, to cry, to care, to burn, and still remain in control. That is not weakness. That is strength. That is Stoic. Whatever time you wake up, it is the right time to begin. You slept in. You wasted the morning. You broke your routine. The guilt creeps in like a fog. You feel behind, undisciplined, unworthy. You say to yourself, I'll start fresh tomorrow. And just like that, you throw away a day that could have been salvaged, redeemed, transformed. The Stoics knew that the clock does not own you. There is no sacred hour to begin your best self. There is only now, and no matter how far you've drifted, no matter how many times you've fallen short, this moment is still yours, still clean, still burning with possibility. Marcus Aurelius wrote, At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I am rising to do the work of a human being. But if you fail at dawn, rise anyway at noon. If not then, rise at dusk. What matters is not the hour, but the decision to return, to recommit, to reclaim the day before it slips away in shame. Perfection is a myth. Consistency is built not on flawless execution, but on relentless returns. You begin again at 6 a.m. or 2 p.m. or after midnight, if need be, because guilt doesn't change your life, action does. Whatever time you wake up, physically, emotionally, spiritually, that's your invitation, not to mourn wasted time, but to seize what's left with fire in your veins and your feet back on the path. There is still time. There is still you. Begin. No deed is small if done with virtue. The world may not notice when you hold the door. It may not praise you for listening quietly instead of interrupting. No headlines will be written about the lie you refused to tell or the anger you swallowed instead of unleashing. But the Stoics knew what most forget. Virtue does not measure itself by applause, and no act, however small, is meaningless when done in alignment with your higher self. Greatness isn't built in grand, heroic moments. It's forged in the mundane. It's in the everyday choices no one sees, the ones that test your patience in traffic, your honesty when it's easier to deceive, your generosity when it costs you something. These are the bricks that build character, quiet, humble, uncelebrated, but lasting. Virtue doesn't need witnesses, it needs willingness. When you choose to act with integrity, no matter how minor the stage, you carve your soul into something solid, and the world does feel it, even if it doesn't know it, because every small good thing makes the whole better. Every moment you choose virtue adds weight to your strength. Every single time. There are no small deeds, only small awareness of their impact. So live as if everything you do matters, because it does, not in how others perceive you, but in who you become by doing it. Hold the line, even when it seems insignificant. The soul remembers, and nothing done with virtue is ever wasted. Not a word, not a step, not a breath. Hold fast to your principles, even when mocked. There will come a moment, perhaps quietly, perhaps loudly, when the world turns its eyes toward you and laughs. Not because you failed, but because you've stood. You chose honesty when deception would have won. You chose restraint when outrage would have thrilled the crowd. You chose silence when gossip demanded your voice. And for this, they mock you. They call you weak, naive, too rigid, too soft, too good. But the Stoics taught, what is right is not always what is applauded. Principles are not costumes for convenient days. They are armor for hard ones. And the true test of your values isn't when they earn you praise, but when they invite ridicule. When standing firm feels like standing alone in a world that rewards compromise and theatrics, to live with unshakable conviction is to become a mirror, one that reflects others' cowardice, confusion, or envy back at them. Of course they'll mock. Of course they'll challenge. It's easier to ridicule virtue than confront their own lack of it. But you must not bend. Not for approval, not for comfort, not for a seat at a table built on sand. Because the moment you trade your principles for acceptance, you lose the one thing the world can never give you back, your self-respect. Let them mock. Let them misunderstand. Let them call your strength weakness. You know the truth. You live the truth. And in the silence of your own soul, untouched by their noise, you will find something they may never know. Peace, real, earned, indestructible peace. Judge no one before judging yourself. It's easy, so easy to cast judgment, to look at someone's choices and say, I'd never do that, to scoff at their weakness, their failure, their mess, and feel taller by comparison. But the Stoics warned against this self-deception. Judgment is often a mirror turned outward to avoid facing inward, and the harshest critics are often those most afraid to be seen fully, by others or by themselves. To judge another before judging yourself is to swing a sword you haven't earned, because how many times have you made the same mistake quietly? How many impulses have you barely resisted? How many truths have you twisted just enough to stay comfortable? The wise person doesn't rush to condemn. They pause. They turn the gaze inward. They ask, am I guilty of this in another form? Have I struggled where this person now stumbles? Because empathy doesn't come from superiority. It comes from self-honesty. To judge rightly, if at all, requires humility. It requires knowing your own contradictions, your private failures, your unspoken regrets. Only then can your perspective be sharpened, not with arrogance, but with compassion. Judgment should not be a weapon. It should be a whisper that calls us back to ourselves, to clean our own house, to confront our own shadows, and only then, maybe, offer guidance, not from above, but from beside. Before pointing at anyone else, stand naked before your own truth and ask, am I ready to be seen too? Gratitude turns what we have into enough. We are wired to chase, to want more, to climb higher, to stretch always toward what we don't yet have. And while ambition can build, unchecked desire only hollows. It convinces us that happiness lives one step ahead, just after the next raise, the next praise, the next escape. But the Stoics saw through this illusion. They knew the secret wasn't to possess more, but to see more in what we already have. Gratitude isn't passivity, it's power. It's not ignoring what could be better. It's awakening to the fact that even now, you are standing in a moment someone else is desperately praying for. The breath you just took, the roof over your head, the mind that allows you to understand these words. These are not small things. They are miracles you've stopped noticing. When you train your mind to say, "This is enough," you stop being owned by your cravings. You stop measuring your life by what's missing. You stop living in lack and begin living in abundance, regardless of your bank account, your status, your story. Gratitude quiets the chaos. It softens envy. It anchors you in the now. And most importantly, it reminds you, joy is not found in getting more. It's found in seeing, truly seeing, what you've had all along. You are not poor if you lack. You are poor if you overlook. So pause, look around, let the ordinary flood you with awe, because what you have, if you're willing to honor it, has already become enough. To live simply is not to live poorly. We are conditioned to believe that more is better, more possessions, more noise, more status. The bigger the house, the fuller the closet, the busier the calendar, the more valuable the life. But the Stoics knew that abundance often hides poverty, not of things, but of peace, because to live simply is not to lack, it is to be free. Simplicity is not deprivation, it is clarity. It is owning only what serves you, not what owns you. It is eating to nourish, not to impress. It is dressing for function, not performance. It is choosing silence when the world screams for attention. It is cutting the excess, not because you can't afford more, but because you've realized you don't need it. The simple life is not about doing less, it's about doing only what matters. Wealth is not in what you accumulate, but in what you can live without. When your happiness no longer depends on luxury or spectacle, you become unshakable. You no longer chase what distracts, because you are anchored in what sustains. To live simply is to live deliberately. It's walking through the world without the weight of pretending, without the clutter of comparison. It's making space for presence, for reflection, for stillness, for truth. And what you'll find in that space is not lack, but richness, the kind no money can buy, because the man who lives simply lives close to his soul, and there is no life richer than that. Endurance is nobler than escape. There comes a point when the pain tightens, the pressure builds, and every part of you screams for relief, to run, to numb, to disappear into comfort, distraction, or silence. Escape offers its arms, soft, familiar, forgiving. But the Stoics stood against that seduction. They believed that endurance, not escape, is the mark of true strength, because to stay when it would be easier to flee is to choose growth over relief. It is to become through suffering, not avoid it. Endurance is not weakness, it is defiance. It is saying, "This will not break me. I may bend, I may bleed, but I will remain." And in that choice, repeated in 1,000 quiet moments, you forge a self no storm can erase. Escape is tempting because it's quick, easy. It doesn't ask for courage, only surrender. But every time you run from hardship, you teach yourself that you cannot handle life. You shrink, you retreat, you start mistaking fragility for peace. But endurance expands you, not all at once, but gradually, like a muscle stretch, like iron shaped in fire. It demands patience, presence, integrity, and yes, it hurts, but it also builds. To endure is to walk through the fire with your eyes open, to carry your burden without bitterness, to face the thing you fear and say, "I'm still here." And when you make it through, because you will, you don't just survive, you emerge transformed, not softer, not smaller, but nobler and undeniably more alive. Desire breeds dependency. Virtue breeds liberty. Desire whispers promises. It tells you happiness is just one promotion away, one lover away, one purchase, one vacation, one more something. And so you chase, you hunger, you reach, but every time you grasp what you wanted, the thrill fades, and a new desire appears, and then another, until one day you wake up not free, but enslaved, chained to cravings that never stop asking, never stop pulling. The Stoics understood this prison well. Desire, they taught, breeds dependency, because the moment you believe you need something external to feel whole, you give it power over you. You become its subject. If it's withheld, you suffer. If it's lost, you break. Your peace becomes conditional, your strength leased, not owned. But virtue frees. When you root your joy in courage, discipline, honesty, justice, no one can take it from you. You are no longer waiting for the world to deliver something. You bring the value. You are the source. You act rightly, not because it benefits you, but because it defines you. And from that alignment comes liberty, the unshakable freedom of a person who does not beg life to be easier, but who meets it with inner sovereignty. The world cannot enslave someone who desires nothing but to be good. Let others chase gold and validation. Let them depend on outcome. You choose virtue, because what you build from within is yours forever, and no desire, not even death, can strip it from you. The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy. When you're wronged, betrayed, insulted, humiliated, rage rises like a storm. Your instinct is to strike back, to return the pain, to make them feel what they made you feel. It feels righteous, it feels justified. But the Stoics saw this for what it is, a trap, because the moment you mirror your enemy's behavior, you become a reflection of the very thing that wounded you. Revenge doesn't heal, it contaminates. It keeps their poison alive inside you. It turns your pain into identity, your justice into obsession, and worse, it costs you the one thing more sacred than any victory, your character. True strength is not in retaliation, it's in restraint. It's looking your enemy in the eye and choosing not to become them. Not because you're weak, but because you're free. When someone lies and you stay honest, you win. When someone hates and you remain grounded in compassion, you win. When cruelty is met with integrity, silence, or calm, you've already conquered. The best revenge isn't about what they feel. It's about what you keep, your peace, your values, your dignity. Because nothing is more infuriating to someone who tried to destroy you than your refusal to break, to become bitter, to descend to their level. To be unlike your enemy is not to ignore the harm. It's to transcend it, to use it not as fuel for retaliation, but as fire that forges you into something greater. You don't need vengeance. You need victory of the soul. You are part of the whole. Live for the whole. You are not alone, not truly, not ever. You were not dropped into this world as an isolated spark, destined to burn on your own. You are part of something vast, intricate, breathing. A family you didn't choose, a humanity you cannot escape. And whether you acknowledge it or not, your life is woven into the fabric of all lives. The Stoics saw this clearly. They believed we are born not just to live, but to serve, to contribute, to elevate the whole, not just protect the self. You are a limb of the body, unique, yes, but dependent, accountable, connected. And just as a hand that serves only itself becomes useless, a person who lives only for their gain becomes lost. This isn't about self-sacrifice to the point of erasure. It's about belonging. It's about recognizing that your choices echo, your actions ripple, your presence matters, not just to you, but to the people you touch, even if you never see the effect. When you live only for yourself, you shrink. Your joys become hollow, your victories lonely. But when you live for the whole, when your strength lifts others, when your wisdom protects, when your virtue contributes, you become limitless, because the good you do does not end with you. To live for the whole is not to dissolve your identity, it's to complete it. You are not just a soul passing through. You are a thread in the human tapestry. And when you live with that awareness, your life becomes part of something eternal. Live as though your thoughts were made public. What if every thought you had, the envy, the judgment, the lust, the resentment, the selfish wish, suddenly echoed out loud for all to hear? No hiding, no filter, no mask. Would you be proud of what they heard, or would you shrink beneath the weight of your unspoken self? The Stoics didn't just believe in virtue on the outside, they believed in inner integrity, the kind that holds when no one is watching. To live as though your thoughts were made public is not about paranoia. It's about purity. It's about choosing to be clean where no one can see, because that is who you are, not just who you perform to be. Most live two lives, the one they show and the one they think. But the gap between the two is where shame festers. That's where anxiety breeds. The Stoic closes that gap, not to become perfect, but to become true, to ensure that who they are in silence is no different than who they are in the crowd. When your thoughts align with your values, you become untouchable, unafraid, because you carry no secrets that can destroy you, no double life that needs defending. You walk through the world with clarity, not just of speech, but of soul. You may never be able to control every thought, but you can examine them, you can train them, you can shape your inner world with the same discipline you apply to your actions. And when your mind becomes a place you're not afraid to share, you found real freedom. Poverty with virtue is better than wealth with vice. The world dazzles us with its illusion that wealth is the measure of success, that the highest life is the richest life, that luxury is the reward of greatness. But Stoicism rips the mask off that lie. What good is a mansion if it shelters a coward? What worth is gold when it's earned through betrayal? What honor lies in indulgence if your soul must rot to attain it? Poverty, when joined with virtue, is not weakness, it is freedom. Because the man who has nothing, yet lives with honesty, courage, and dignity, is untouchable. He is not owned by greed. He does not serve status. He does not sell his conscience for applause or gain. His peace cannot be bought, and his worth does not rise or fall with the market. Wealth without virtue, on the other hand, is a golden prison. The one who gains everything by stepping on others, who lives in deception, who worships possession at the cost of principle, is not free. He is enslaved. Enslaved to fear of loss, to endless hunger, to a reputation that must be defended like a lie. The Stoic would rather sleep on stone with a clear heart than on silk sheets stained with shame, because virtue, not comfort, makes a life noble. If you must choose, choose the hard road that keeps your soul intact. Let others chase what glitters. Let them feast. You, keep your hands clean, because true wealth is found where your integrity remains whole, even when your pockets are empty. You do not own your possessions. They own you if you cling. You buy the house, you drive the car, you wear the watch, hold the phone, decorate the shelves. You call them yours. But if your peace depends on them, if your worth rises and falls with them, if the thought of losing them stirs fear in your gut, then you are not their master. You are their prisoner. The Stoics knew that possessions are not the problem. Attachment is. Things are tools, useful, beautiful, sometimes meaningful. But the moment you cling, the moment your identity fuses with what you own, you become vulnerable to every thief, every market crash, every twist of fate. You say you own your car, yet you obsess over scratches. You say you own your home, yet every repair fills you with stress. You say you own your lifestyle, yet the thought of scaling down terrifies you. This is not ownership. This is enslavement wrapped in luxury. The Stoic walks freely among wealth, not bound by it. They enjoy what they have, but hold it loosely, knowing that what fortune gives, it can take away just as easily. And when that moment comes, when not if, the one who clings will break, but the one who's detached will simply breathe. and walk forward lighter. True wealth is not what you keep, it's what you can let go of without losing yourself. Because in the end, what you own fades, what you are remains, and the more tightly you grip, the more those things begin to grip you. Teach by example, not argument. Words are easy, they cost nothing, risk little, and can be bent to win applause without ever touching truth. But the Stoics knew real teaching isn't spoken, it's lived. Your life is your loudest message, louder than lectures, sharper than debate. People may dismiss your arguments, resist your logic, deny your beliefs, but they cannot ignore your example. To live with integrity, day after day, when no one's watching, that is the greatest persuasion. When you respond to cruelty with calm, when you admit fault before blame finds you, when you sacrifice convenience for principle, comfort for courage, that is when people learn. Not because you told them, but because you showed them what strength looks like in motion. Arguments often inflame ego. They turn truth into a contest, virtue into a scoreboard. You may win the debate, but lose the chance to inspire. But your example, that seeps in quietly. It disarms, it lingers, it teaches without ever demanding. And in a world drowning in noise, example is the only voice that still carries. The Stoic walks the path silently, not for recognition, but because walking it is enough, because to embody what you believe is the only teaching that cannot be faked. So speak, yes, when needed, but live first. Live in a way that makes others pause, that makes them question their shortcuts, that makes them wonder, what would it take to be like that? Because the truest lessons are not taught, they are witnessed. The mind adapts and conquers all it faces. At first, it seems impossible. The loss, the failure, the change that guts you, the pain that won't let you breathe. You tell yourself, I can't handle this. But the Stoics knew something deeper than fear, something that echoes through every soul that's survived, the unimaginable. The mind bends. It doesn't break. It adapts. You were not made fragile. You were made to endure. And more than that, to overcome. The mind, when trained, is the most powerful weapon in the world. It turns wounds into wisdom. It turns obstacles into openings. It looks at what once felt unbearable and says, I survived this. I was made stronger by it. At first you react. You despair. That's natural. But then, if you refuse to collapse, you adjust. You begin to see clearly. You change your expectations. You change your approach. What once felt like the end becomes a turning point. The Stoics believe the mind can make a heaven out of hell, or a hell out of heaven. That your thoughts are the lens through which reality takes shape. And when you learn to choose the right thoughts, to discipline your response, to frame every blow as a challenge, you become unconquerable. You may not control what hits you, but you control what it means. You control how you rise, because every adaptation is a quiet victory, and the mind, steady and trained, becomes a force no hardship can outrun. It doesn't just endure life, it masters it. Let your life prove your philosophy. Anyone can speak wise words. Anyone can quote Marcus Aurelius, frame a line from Epictetus, or write about virtue as if it's easy. But the Stoics didn't care what you said. They cared how you lived. Philosophy was not a decoration. It was a discipline. Not a performance, but a practice. Your beliefs mean nothing until your life reflects them, especially when it's hard. It's easy to be principled when nothing challenges you. But what happens when the storm hits? When you're insulted, overlooked, betrayed? Do you act as the Stoic you claim to admire? Or do your values vanish in heat like ink and flame? Let your life be the proof. Don't talk about temperance. Live it when temptation calls. Don't speak of courage. Show it when fear chokes your voice. Don't preach kindness. Embody it when the world gives you every reason to be cruel. The truth is, no one remembers your philosophies. They remember your presence, your restraint, your patience, your dignity under pressure. That's where Stoicism lives, not in ideas, but in action. Not in what you say about the good life, but in how you handle a bad one. Your daily choices are your philosophy's final exam, not in front of an audience, but alone, in the quiet spaces where no applause comes. Let others shout their wisdom. You live yours, because a life lived rightly is the only philosophy that cannot be denied, and it speaks long after you are gone. It is better to be silent than to lie. There comes a moment when the truth feels dangerous. A question is asked, a gaze is held, and your heart skips, because honesty might cost you. So you're tempted to bend it, just slightly, a softened version, a deflection, a white lie. It seems harmless, maybe even kind, but the Stoics saw it for what it is, a fracture, not just of trust, but of the soul. To lie is to abandon yourself in favor of the moment, to betray your values to escape discomfort, and while it may buy peace on the outside, it leaves chaos within, because every lie chips away at the unity between your thoughts and your words, and when those are no longer aligned, you live divided, torn between who you are and who you pretend to be. Silence is not weakness, it is strength wrapped in restraint. The Stoic knows when to speak and when to hold still, not to hide, but to preserve, to protect dignity, to refuse the poison of falsehood when the full truth cannot yet be spoken. Sometimes silence is the truth. It is the refusal to manufacture comfort at the cost of clarity. It is standing still when others twist. It is saying, I will not contribute to illusion. I would rather say nothing than say something false. And in a world filled with noise, silence becomes loud, pure, unshakable, because once your words lose their truth, they lose their weight. But when silence becomes your shield, your integrity remains untouched, and there is no lie worth trading that. Live as if you were dying, not in fear, but in focus. You are dying, not someday, not in the distant abstract. Now, this minute, breath by breath, moment by moment, your time is slipping, quietly, invisibly, irreversibly, and yet you live as if life is on layaway, as if there will always be more chances, more words to say, more love to give, more time to become who you meant to be. The Stoics face this truth with piercing eyes. To remember death is not to panic, it is to wake up, because when you live with death at your shoulder, you stop wasting time on what doesn't matter. Petty arguments lose their fire. Envy becomes absurd. Procrastination turns tragic. And suddenly, every day becomes urgent, not in anxiety, but in meaning. This is not about rushing. It's about focusing, about doing what needs to be done, saying what needs to be said, being who you are now, not after one more delay. You don't wait for the perfect moment. You create it because you know the clock is ticking, and that is what makes your presence sharp, your choices deliberate, your love real. To live as if you were dying is to live with clarity, to treat time as sacred, not disposable, to trade distraction for direction, to leave nothing unsaid, no gratitude withheld, no virtue postponed. You don't need to fear the end. You just need to make sure that when it comes, it doesn't find you unlived. The only path to tranquility is acceptance. You fight it, the delay, the betrayal, the illness, the outcome you didn't ask for. You clench your fists against life as if fury could rewrite fate, but it doesn't. It only exhausts you. The more you resist what is, the more peace slips through your fingers. The Stoics saw this clearly. Tranquility isn't found in control. It's found in surrender. Not surrender to weakness, but surrender to reality. Acceptance is not giving up. It is waking up. It is the moment you stop saying, this shouldn't be happening, and start asking, what can I do now that it is? That shift from protest to presence is the doorway to calm, because suffering doesn't come from events. It comes from your refusal to let them be what they are. The storm doesn't hurt you. Your demand for sunshine does. Acceptance doesn't mean you like what happened. It means you stop being at war with it. You stop living in fantasies of how it could have gone and return to the solid ground of how it did. From there, and only there, can you act wisely, respond instead of react, heal instead of harden. The Stoics trained for this, every day reminding themselves, the world is not mine to shape, only mine to meet. And when you meet it with open hands instead of clenched fists, life begins to soften, not because it changed, but because you did. You were never meant to conquer everything. You were meant to accept, and in that stillness, find the unshakable center the storm cannot touch. Fate leads the willing, drags the unwilling. Life will take you where it will. You can resist, you can fight, you can scream at the sky, clench your fists at every twist, curse every loss, deny every ending. But fate does not pause for protest. It does not soften for the stubborn. It moves, and the only choice you truly have is how you meet it. The Stoics saw this with piercing clarity. Amor fati, love your fate, not tolerate, not endure, love it. Because when you align your will with what is, fate becomes a path. But when you resist it, fate becomes a chain. The willing are led. They bend like trees in the wind, still rooted but not broken. They flow with life, adjust to change, meet misfortune with calm eyes. They do not lose their strength. They channel it. They become powerful not by control, but by acceptance. The unwilling are dragged, kicking, screaming, hurting not because life is cruel, but because they refuse to let go of how it should have been. They are torn not by reality, but by their refusal to embrace it. Fate drags them not as punishment, but as truth pulling them through the illusions they refuse to release. You cannot stop the river, but you can swim with it. You can lift your chin and say, wherever this current takes me, I will not go bitter. I will go awake. Fate does not break you. Your resistance does. Peace comes not from having control, but from surrendering to what you cannot. We spend our lives grasping for control, tightening our grip on outcomes, people, plans, futures. We think if we can just hold everything still, we'll be safe. If we can predict the storm, we won't drown. If we can manage every detail, we'll never suffer. But the world was never built to bend to your will, and the more you cling, the more it slips through your fingers. The Stoics understood this deeply. True peace does not come from mastery over life's chaos. It comes from releasing what was never yours to command, not in defeat, but in wisdom, not in passivity, but in courage. Because surrender isn't giving up, it's knowing where your power ends. You cannot control the weather, the economy, what others think of you, whether people stay or go, whether life unfolds gently or breaks you open. But you can control your response, your attitude, your values, your effort, your ability to remain whole even as the world unravels around you. Peace doesn't come when everything is calm. It comes when you are, regardless. When you stop fighting reality, reality stops being the enemy. You learn to stand in the storm, not untouched, but unshaken. You learn to let go, not because you're weak, but because you're finally strong enough to trust what's beyond your reach. Let go of control, and you'll find what you were chasing all along: stillness, freedom, and a soul that no longer trembles at the unknown.